Come on in. Come on. We are live on the tube. Let's chat and gab. I hope y'all can hear me well. So remember, this channel is for commentary and entertainment only. Please hit the like button, subscribe for notification, and share with others. Greetings, Saga lovers. Welcome to the Saga Reveal. I'm your host, Madem-Oiselle. I hope y'all ready for tonight's debate. Let me just make sure, since I'm the only one here so far, that the live is on. Let's check it. It shall not be long. Let's get on. Are you ready for the debate tonight? Let me know. Alrighty, it's working. We are ready to shine. All right, I got my tea and I am settled in, so get cozy, get comfy. So I am here and the gloves are off. Microphone is working. So I am going to go and search for the live feed on YouTube. What do we have? What do we have? What do we have? Let's see. Let's see. We go home. Oh well, the pleb is on. Hello, pleb. I see ya. Let's go. Let me share the screen with you all here. Share. Got it. All right. So what is a CPAC doing? No, let's go back. And how was the debate last night? That was something else. I wish I'd have watched it in French, but it was still very interesting to see how Mr. Carney was going to handle this debate, since he was not willing to join the debate, right? Okay, let's see. National dot. Let's see. Canada. Let's go check here. What is CP24 up to?
Difference is Mr. Polyev and Mr. Carney Scott are actually next to each other rather than
There we are.
kind of the tail end as they were last time. I'm wondering if there's anything to be said for the prospect of more engagement, direct engagement between the two because of that physical positioning.
I would bet on that. And the other thing, particularly picking up on what Kathleen said, that if we can expect Sting to be more aggressive with Mr. Carney, then you look at this set and you say, now, there he is, poor fella, a petal of roses between two thorns. And they're going to be both
right next to each other now.
Last time he was at the end, and I do think that advantage him, as we said earlier. And if he's stuck in the middle, you know, that then you sort of got the tennis match thing going on.
Yeah. Like, Quebec leader.
You know, ping-ponging back and forth,
forgets
it'll be
he's
harder for him
running for the rest of Canada here sometimes.
And make the energy.
We'll give him a chance today.
Yeah. I think even last night it was striking the degree to up on Mark Carney. I would have thought, even if it's a competitive race, his numbers alone as preferred prime minister that is his big advantage. That is a big advantage right now. How yet that didn't coalescing up at all on.
Yes,
In
CP24. I wish I was on the
in
table with you
campaign
guys,
that,
but
Corey just
it's
ran
my
with
channel.
Mr. Ford.
So
He
I'm
was
gonna be
ganged up
talking
on,
over
and he
you.
just took all the bullets and just kept smiling.
Yeah.
And so there is a way to survive that kind of
Smiling.
fire.
Corey, and sort
More
of like a
like
strategy, like and you go
crying.
win thinking I'm the front runner, so that's going to be.
I would be taking no risk if I were.
Yeah.
Move on.
I just
Find
think you
something
it all
else to
off
talk about.
You truck around stereo. You try to the more the dogs
Canada
are barking
is not
at you, the more
running
you
for
just
premier.
look straight at the camera
There is
and
no Trump on the
try to
ballot.
maintain
Can
your
somebody
cool.
tell him that?
And is the gun for everyone else, Scott?
It may well be. And I'll go back to Polyev. I think Kathleen is correct. And Singh's strategy is not to focus as much on Polyev, but rather to focus his fire on Carney tonight. Well, then Polyev may say to himself, all right, okay, now that's good. Now I can actually not worry so much about the teardown of Carney. Someone else is going to take care of the dirty work for me, and I can focus on it. We'll see how much human strategic thrust, as I've known Pierre Polyev do his dirty work for him. He always pushes him out of the way and says, no, please me first. So that'll be interesting to watch the real nature of people, because it does bring out, your sort of the inner you under light and under pressure.
It's joining us now. You're looking live inside the room. We're in just 5 minutes time. Those four men will face off against each other. They are, of course, leading a political party. This is the only English language. Kathleen, can you talk a bit about the sort of moment that we're in?
I think they should have done this
and then into just the final week of the campaign.
Like
we're already
to make it fair.
of the way done.
Yeah, it seems long. Much more.
I'm not saying that because I don't know Quebec. I am from Quebec. I grew up in
a
Quebec.
campaign that I was involved with in 2011. There was also a long weekend,
only
Easter weekend during the campaign, and those that often families return. They gather,
they're not
they
picky.
have conversations.
They're grown-ups.
And really the campaigns
Love
take
you, Canada.
Foot off the gas a little bit because it's all a weekend, and actually,
our beautiful 13 colonies are ready for
weekend.
The next.
He's really going to start looking for the timeline like 2 Wednesday next week, and last night to really get something into people's brains before they go away for the holiday weekend.
I thought the other thing that struck me last night, Corey, was the debate watch, just talking right to camera all the time, right? And last night there was a lot, necessarily with each other, but with the moderator more. Yeah. Do you think there'll be more talking to Canadians tonight, particularly because not doing anything away from the fresh debate, streaming, to a
final
segment
debate of the Canadian campaign is tonight.
And for many of them not in their first language.
Yes.
So, I think there will be more engagement. Pagan's very experienced moderator. A lot of times,
I think out of everybody,
we'll see. I think the standard thing is the camera look less at each other. You don't want, especially if you're Carney, you don't want to create those confrontation
ahead of
moments.
the game. You didn't want to waste any time.
See. Like there really hasn't been much change in the polls in the last few weeks.
So yes, kudos. So it's very intelligent move, smart move, educated move.
This week that's changed, but
looks like the other one didn't.
Like a 1 or 2
think
point
he
change
was
in the
going to lose a momentum that was.
It's just twitching in the margin of error, and that's really what we've seen for the last 3 weeks. Is there's been virtually no change in the polls. So, I think it'll be Tuesday before we know whether there's change in trajectory, and 1-2 points one way or the other in a change in trajectory.
Well, that's right. Both Kathleen and Corey are right that we won't really know if today matters until Tuesday or so. But I'll say this emphatically. I have all waited holidays to campaign. What's going on out there? Talking, and you think, you know what? We did fine in that debate. It wasn't an event. Everything's cruising. And then you find out, sorry, actually, we didn't cruise. We crashed. And you don't learn until it's damn near too late to fix it.
You love them when you have momentum, though, because we went in 2011. We went into that weekend with momentum, and it just built. So you can, if you're having momentum, if you had a good night, if someone comes out of here tonight with a really good win, then it'll be great.
Half of the votes in this election by Tuesday morning,
Will
will
be
it
in the-
being
will be
cast?
cast,
Will
yeah.
it being cast?
Yeah.
astonishing.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's the other
So-
thing. It's not just a long weekend; it's the start of
Advanced
advance.
voting.
It's
Yeah.
advanced
Advanced
poll. So
voting.
4 days advanced poll voting are starting tomorrow, and the last
Yeah.
day is Monday of that. If it's similar to other elections, half of the votes will have been cast by Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
And you're at electorate now, you're only vying for half the votes. So like it's, I think this is the last big important event. It's happening right before the voting starts. We're not going to know until, probably early next week, whether it's had any effect. This is
And the
last
campaigns
big
don't know more
important
than
event.
we do either. I mean, they have their own internal tracking, but there is literally going to be a giant national game of kiss, marry, kill all weekend long. And there's not much you can do to get.
Final seconds here. 6% of the population really undecided. 20% open to changing their vote. How big? How important is that tonight?
Maybe. I'm not as convinced that there's a lot of movement to be had. And Corey and I have talked about this. I think this thing is set unless something tonight disturbs it.
Well, something could. Corey
That's why we're
tonight,
here.
Kathleen Monk,
Yeah.
and Scott Reed. That is why we are here, and we will be here at the conclusion of the debate as well. The debate gets underway in just a few seconds. We're going to carry the full thing live for you. 2 hours. All four leaders will square off against each other inside that building just behind me, and then we are back with 2 hours post-game analysis. We'll join you then for watching live.
Live from the atrium of Maison Radio Canada in Montreal, 4 federal leaders will debate for your vote. The leaders are here and ready to go. Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre, Yves-François Blanchet, and Jagmeet
Let me
Singh.
see if I can
They will
see
debate
another
the major
channel.
challenges
See who
facing our
has
country,
started it
from
first.
tariffs
Maybe
to the cost of
CPAC.
living, public
Yes,
safety,
let's see.
energy, and leading in a crisis. Good evening, everybody. I'm Steve Paikin, your moderator for tonight's debate. Each leader has agreed to the
Oh, yeah.
following. No notes. Answer the questions. Stay on theme. Stay on time. How much each leader speaks will be counted on these clocks, visible to the leaders and to you at home. This is the 2025 Federal Leaders Debate. Well, welcome, leaders. Good to be with you here tonight in Montreal for what I'm sure will be a memorable evening. Our first theme is tariffs and threats to Canada, and we will begin with a round of questions. You will each have a minute to answer, and then we'll go to open debate. And the first question goes to Mr.
Of
Okay.
course.
The start point
Let's
for
go.
negotiations to Carney. Our relationship with the U.S. is over as we know it.
Well, first, Steve, may I thank you and also thank fellow leaders for their service to
Hi, whoever's in
Canada,
here.
people at home for taking the time to watch. I just underscore the premise to your question, because I think the relationship that we've had with the United States, relationship over the course of almost the last 4 decades, which has been one of steady and increasing integration, has fundamentally changed because the president is looking to fundamentally restructure the trading system. So the starting point has to be strength. It has to show that we have control of our own economic destiny, has to have a clear plan here at home to build this economy, to diversify our trading partners with like-minded countries, and also has to have a position of strength in terms of our reaction to the U.S. unjustified tariffs. And that's why we have put in place counter tariffs that have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here at home.
Mr. Poilievre, would you do anything differently?
Well, first of all, thank you, Steve, and thank you to our fellow contestants here today. It's an honor to be here. What would I do different? Well, I'll start by what I would do the same. I think we do need to counter the American tariffs with our own to deter this economic aggression. We must make clear that we will always be sovereign. And the Liberal government has weakened our economy with anti-energy laws, red tape, and high taxes that have driven $500 billion out of our country into the United States and made us incapable of shipping our resources overseas. That weakness threatens our ability to stand up for ourselves. So what I do, I would cut taxes, red tape, and approve our resource projects so that we can get
You agree?
our goods to market and bring home jobs, stand up to Trump from a position of strength.
Mr. Singh, you get the next question. Can we trust the United States to work with us on matters such as Arctic sovereignty and defense?
I think we've seen, first of all, good evening, and thank you for Steve. We've seen what, for a lot of people, feels like a betrayal when we look at the United States. We grew up in a border town, a group in Windsor, and we saw how connected we were as a city and as a community. People lived on one side of the border, worked on the other. People traveled back and forth all the time. We're in the automotive capital of Canada, and we knew how important it was to be able to build cars in Canada. We saw it back and forth across the border. Seeing what Donald Trump did to attack Canada in this unprovoked way without any justification really felt like a betrayal. And Canadians are right, they won't release Trump's point, and we can't really have a lot of faith in him. So when it comes to our Arctic sovereignty and our security, we need to make decisions that are in our best interest and no longer be so dependent and so reliant on the U.S. Yeah. And that's what I would advocate for, making sure we are resilient, independent, and less dependent on the United States.
Mr. Blanchet, for you, what supports
Thank you, Jagmeet
by terror?
Many of them. First, be all welcome in Quebec and Montreal. You have me because I try not to speak English in Montreal. However, I think we should never underestimate the threat that Mr. Trump poses on Quebec economy and Canada economy and Mexico economy. But we must acknowledge the fact that the economy of Quebec is built differently. The challenges are not the same. The necessity for Quebec to have at least partly its own voice in the negotiation is important. The difference between Quebec and Canada is very important in terms of economy, but also in terms of identity and language and values and who we are and the way we want to handle immigration. So we have the right to be different. And if this difference is being respected by whoever becomes Prime Minister of Canada, we will be reliable partners in order to achieve the best possible negotiation and protect ourselves and our economies as partners.
See, Mr. Blanchet. Okay, we now move into open debate.
Mr. Blanchet.
Port, dollar for dollar tariffs, even if ultimately threaten Canadian jobs and businesses.
No, and in fact, we've already moved off from dollar for dollar tariffs.
Why not?
We have to recognize, and I think we all do, the United States economy is more than 10 times the size of the Canadian economy. And the principle in terms of our counter tariffs is to have maximum impact in the United States, as I said a moment ago, minimum impact here. So we have to think about the impact on Canadian businesses. I'll give you one example, if I may. In the auto sector, the way we've designed those auto tariffs is that Canadian automakers, if they maintain production here, if they maintain their investments here, when I say Canadian automakers, I mean automakers that have jobs and plants and production in Canada.
American companies.
Then they can have lower tariffs
on
Asian
company
they ship to the United States. We create a huge incentive for them in order to do that. We also have carved out the Canadian auto parts sector. Last point, I know you're pressed for time. The Canadian auto parts sector, so that it can remain competitive with the United States. We're focused on maximizing Canadian jobs, maximizing.
Well, Mr. Carney, you claim that you want our country to respond with strength, but after the last decade, half of the time you've been Trudeau's economic advisor, our economy is weaker than ever before. It's been the worst growth in the G7. We've lost $500 billion of investment south of the border. You supported blocking pipelines in Canada that gave Donald Trump and the U.S. a near monopoly over our energy. And now you want to keep in place Bill C-69, the liberal no new development law that blocks us from shipping our resources overseas. How could you think of that idea to give us a continued monopoly on our energy projects when you have seen how much these liberal policies have weakened our country over the last decade?
Let Mr. Carney respond, and then Mr. Singh.
Sure.
If I may, yes. So let's go to my record. My record is a month long as Prime Minister. And this goes to the heart of coming to the Americans with strength, but doing the right thing for Canada. Within the first Prime Minister,
yourself up,
as well as leaders of Indigenous. got an agreement with all those and territories, doesn't happen very often, got an agreement for them to have one Canadian economy instead of 13. First point. Secondly, the federal government to by Canada Day, free trade in Canada by Canada Day. Thirdly, the federal government to commit back to
the question was about
Sorry,
pipelines.
I'm getting to it. Thirdly, one project, one review, and relying
That's
on provincial. Yes, it is possible under. It is possible on our system.
No,
it is the impact assessment. It is agreed on under the impact assessment framework, and we have cooperation agreement with British Columbia already. We're looking forward to them with the other provinces. We will move forward.
Got to let you finish. This is turn, please. Of course, we agree around having a strategic response to the United States. But what I'm concerned about doing here in Canada, we are already seeing threats to our country in that just the threat alone of the tariffs have meant Canadians have lost their jobs. The threats of the tariffs that are in place right now, the impact of those tariffs is that we've lost jobs in steel, aluminum, and the auto sector. People losing their jobs. And while Mr. Carney, you had time, as you mentioned, not very long time, but as Prime Minister, you showed us your priorities. The first thing you did is you had traveled, you made a tax cut for millionaires, which was reversing on the capital gains. So you gave a tax cut to millionaires, but you didn't have time to increase the amount that workers get on EI. Right now, workers who are struggling and wondering, what am I going to do if I lose my job? Workers who've lost their job are saying, how do I pay my bills when EI only covers half of a worker's salary? 40 hours worked, but right now most workers are spending their entire salary just to pay their mortgage and their rent and to put food on the table. So EI is not good enough, and it shows Canadians that you didn't make it a priority to protect those that are impacted by these tariffs, that are threatened because their jobs are lost.
We have not heard from Mr. Blanchet, so please.
Yeah, Mr. Carney, you are becoming a real Canadian leader, saying one thing in French and another one in English. You said in British Columbia in February that you would force oil and gas through pipelines through Quebec, either we wanted it or not. You would use emergency powers in order to do so. And 2 days later in Montreal, you said that you would never do that without the approval of Quebec. What's the point of using emergency powers if you do have the agreement of Quebec? However, I do agree with you. It's important to be very strong in front of Mr. Trump. However, I would keep the dollar for dollar policy. Don't we in front of Mr. Trump and counter tariffs to already $2 billion Ontario industry, car industry, and the lumberwood industry in Quebec has already paid to United States $2 billion, and you have not raised one finger in order to help us.
Let's get from Mr. Poilievre and then a response from Mr. Carney.
Well, Mr. Carney refused to answer the question about pipelines. Just the other day, he said that he doesn't necessarily think we need to build pipelines. Let me tell you what that means. Right now, the Americans get 97% of our oil, 100% of our natural gas exports at big discounts. We have to send Canadian oil from Western Canada through the States just to get it back to Quebec because we don't have a pipeline. And now there's this law, Liberal Law C-69, which effectively bans pipelines. The 14 biggest energy and resource companies say it has to go if we're ever going to project. And I asked Mr. Carney why he would keep in place this anti-pipeline law that effectively empowers Donald Trump to have a total monopoly on our single biggest export. Why would you repeal this liberal law? Isn't it because you are exactly the same in the same line as Justin Trudeau and the rest of the liberal team? It is now making up.
Well, let me pick up a couple of things. First thing I did as Prime Minister was to cut the carbon tax. That's the first thing. Second thing is made a commitment.
What a great idea.
Made a commitment that all proceeds, if Mr. Steve, if I may address, I'm trying to do it quickly because several points raised. All proceeds go to workers and the firms most affected, and those proceeds are considerable.
I like to be cut off.
Third thing, I'm interested in solutions. I'm interested in getting energy infrastructure built. That means pipelines, that means carbon capture, storage, that means electricity grids. And here's how you do it. And we've already moved in the first month. Cooperation agreements with the provinces. Guess what? We are a federation. You need to cooperate with Quebec. You need to cooperate with the provinces. You need to get first Nations and Indigenous people buy-in. You can do that through the one project, one review window that we put in place at fulfill the federal responsibility, but not the unique.
Mr. Poilievre, you want to come back on that?
What you're saying, Mr. Carney, with respect, is a total contradiction. The No New Development Law, C-69, guarantees there will not be one-stop shop because it requires the government of Canada to actually duplicate the same
project. Have no regulation.
Have one-stop shop.
Mr. Singh, let's
over any energy.
Mr. Singh,
Sorry,
we just got to finish the sentence.
Pollute.
Let's let him finish the sentence.
That's true, Mr. Singh. The reality is we should have strong rules enforced once. We shouldn't have multiple levels of referral that it takes now 17 years to get a major project approved in this country. That is why in the last 10 years we've had the worst economic growth in the entire G7. We cannot afford a liberal term. We need a change, and the Conservative plan for change will include repealing the anti-pipeline law so we can get our energy to markets in the United States.
Mr. Singh,
these about who's more pro-pipeline. That's what they did. I think what we've talking about energy in our country, we need to build an east-west grid. Let's use our power as a nation to build a national project that creates good jobs, that strengthens us future, where we can energy for businesses, for people, so we can build a stronger economy. That's the energy of the future that we need.
Mr. Carney.
3 quick points. First, the pipeline built, yes. TMX built. That's why oil exports up 50% over the course of the last few years. Secondly,
I don't think
Mr. Singh is absolutely right about these connections. We're part of the energy order, huge opportunities for this country. We have to be able to do more than one thing. Third point, fundamental point. We can give ourselves far more than Donald Trump can ever take away. If we have one Canadian economy, not 13, and if we just look at that agreement we got with the provinces, look at what Ontario and Nova Scotia have just announced in terms of their steps towards this. This is within our grasp.
Monsieur Blanchet, what should we be prepared to concede in our negotiations with the United States?
Having internal.
I want to be back to something that Mr. Carney said. You can't do something and the opposite, and you can't fill people's mind with nonsense.
Thank you.
Quebec has, by law, its own environmental review institution, and you cannot, through a federal decision, even through a Quebec government decision, go over the BAP, as we call it. If the BAP says no, it's no.
No. This is the point. This is the point. The federal government can do the following, which is to take the decision to abide by the decision of the Quebec BAP. That is within the federal government's power. That is known as cooperative federalism. That's what we need to do.
And do you understand one other point?
He doesn't want to work with you, it seems
this
like.
Is what we need to do in crisis.
We have Moïse and then Mr. Poilievre.
Yeah.
Mr. Blanchet doesn't like
the building of those pipelines will take at least 10 to 14 years. Mr. Trump will be 90 years old, not president no more, and somebody of course, less terrible will be there before you can even dream of having oil through this pipeline of yours.
We're less than a minute to go, Mr. Poilievre. I promised you.
Listen, after last years of liberals blocking pipelines and killing jobs,
sounds wild when you say
we actually need to get things done. We need a change, and our conservative plan for change will repeal the no new pipelines law.
It's the once upon a time
true one-stop shop. Set up ready, Shell can approve LNG liquefaction export plants, mines, pipelines, nuclear plants, and also hydroelectric dams so that we can generate the power we need to be strong, self-reliant, and stand on our own 2 feet for a change.
Last quick word to Mr. Carney.
Okay, quick word. Bringing it back to what we were talking about, which is tariffs, the threats to Canada, how to negotiate. We need these options. We need to act. We need to diversify our trade partners.
And that
will
is
give
our
us
time in this
strength to the
segment.
U.S.
That is our time. Okay, you know my job tonight. I got to be the heavy guy here every now and then, making sure everybody comes to time. And I'm keeping an eye as well on making sure that everybody gets rough justice over here. That concludes our first section and our first debate. Up next, affordability and the cost of living.
Our goal is to double the pace of housing construction.
You will lower your bills,
Double the cost.
actually afford.
Il faudra parler des entreprises du Québec, des travailleurs du Québec, des aînés du Québec.
A big, powerful, bring it home tax cut on work, investment, energy, and home building.
Blanchette's always talking about Quebec.
Here's same idea. One-on-one questions followed by and Mr. Pellier at the first time. Many provinces, including some conservative targets, none of which have been met. Why do you think your housing plan will be any different?
Let me start by talking to the young people of the nation and those who are aspiring to home ownership. You know, it was only 10 years ago you could buy an average house for $450,000.
Yes.
But in the last lost Liberal decade, housing costs have doubled, rising faster than in any country in the G7. And so now our youth cannot afford a home, and our seniors are worried about being evicted. We can't afford a fourth Liberal term of rising housing costs. We need a change. And our Conservative plan for change will, 1, axe the federal sales tax on new homes. 2, incentivize municipalities to cut their construction taxes to bring houses down in cost by $100,000. 3, sell off federal land for homes. And 4, train up 350,000 young trades workers who can help build those homes. Because you deserve a home, and we're going to make it happen for a change.
Also on the issue of affordability, Mr. Singh, you get the next question. How do you bring down grocery prices in the midst of a trade war?
I appreciate the question. This is a big concern. When I talk to Canadians, they tell me they're really feeling squeezed from the cost of living. That's one of the top things that people tell me about. People are saying, I can't afford to buy groceries. Every time I go to the grocery store, it's just ongoing worry and
10 years
feeling of anxiety that can I actually afford the things that my family needs. On top of that, people are worried about the stuff. I think those are the two biggest things I hear. So we can do things about this. Other countries have taken concrete steps. We can put in a price cap on food essentials. France has done it. Greece has done it to great success. It's brought down the cost of food significantly in both those jurisdictions. We can also ban corporate landlords from buying up the affordable homes to keep homes that are affordable. We can make things better for Canadians, but it requires having the courage to take on the powerful corporations that are ripping you off, that are price gouging you. And we know that price gouging is one of the major reasons why food prices are going up. You're never going to hear Pierre Poilievre or Mr. Carney talk about the fact that these are the corporations.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. That's time. Mr. Blanchet, I want to ask you about old age security, which will soon cost this country $100 billion annually. We understand you would like to expand it. How would you pay for that?
We would want it to be just for everybody because the Liberals have created the discrimination against elders, which are 65 to 75 years old, having 10% less income from federal government than those who are over 75. But the best way to do it is to have everybody pay its fair share in terms of tax, which means that one should not be entitled to hide money in fiscal paradise in order not to pay him or his clients or friends, not to pay billions of dollars in taxes that could be used to help the situation of elders. Those are things which are supposed to be applied to everybody. There are a lot of questions to be answered about that. One way to do it is to reduce the pressure on housing price to make sure that the whole budget of elders and families and workers can afford houses which have increased dramatically in price.
Monsieur Blanchet. That's time for this one. Mr. Carney, I want to ask you
Maybe
about
Monsieur
housing,
Blanchet could
which
treat
over the past decade
the rest of Canada
has
like
gone from
Quebec.
a problem to a crisis while the Liberals were in power. Is your policy on getting homes built any different from your predecessors, and how?
This is one of the reasons I entered this contest. Because of the housing crisis, the cost of living crisis, the housing crisis, and the Trump crisis to help fix it. And I would look, the housing approach is fundamentally different because we need a fundamentally different approach. We need to build housing at a rate that we haven't seen since the end of the Second World War. We do need a fundamentally different approach. And with the fundamentally different approach, we can build an entirely new industry. So the question is how? Now, Mr. Poilievre and I agree on some things. Okay, I agree as well on reducing the tax on first-time home purchases as a way to buy. But I am focused on increasing the supply of homes and doing that in a way that uses Canadian technology in modular, prefabricated housing, that uses Canadian lumber, including in reinforced timber, and uses Canadian workers. And in all respects, we're scaling up.
Giving his own ad for his own businesses.
Double the rate of home building.
His
Thank
investors.
you, Mr. Carney. That's time. We now move to open forum here. And Mr. Singh, you get the first comment. Many of you have pledged to cut the GST on many aspects of buying a home. And Mr. Singh, I want to ask you, would you cut the GST on anything else in order to make life more affordable?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm the only one on this stage that fought to give people a GST holiday. Interestingly, while the GST holiday helps working class folks, middle class folks by taking off the GST off essentials, the Conservatives voted against the idea of giving people, actual folks that need help, a tax break, and would rather give millionaires a tax break, which shows you whose side he's on, which is not surprising. But what is surprising is that Mr. Carney also said that giving people a break on their GST is a bad idea. Mr. Carney, why do you think giving a tax break to capital gains folks that earn more than $1 million is a good idea, but helping a family afford their groceries, helping people afford their bills for their internet, their cell phone, their home heating, giving them relief to take the GST off those is a bad idea, but giving a tax break to people who really only earn over more than $1.4 million, that's somehow a good idea.
Okay, you went after
that's your numbers.
You went after Mr. Poilievre first, so I'm going to give him the first shot to respond.
Well, Mr. Carney, the reality is that housing costs doubled under the Liberal government. While Justin Trudeau made exactly the same promises that you are now repeating today, he promised that he would double home building. In fact, home building went down. He promised that he'd reduce the cost. In fact, it went up. And now here we are. Mark Carney is asking for a fourth Liberal term, repeating the exact same Liberal promises that priced you out of a house. Just a few weeks ago, before the election, the Liberals voted against taking the GST off new homes, and they have continued to build up bureaucracies that block construction. We need a change so that you can afford a home, and our change will be, again, to axe the sales tax on new homes, incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development costs. Train up 350,000 young people who can be in the trades to build those homes and sell off the land that is going to be needed in order to build homes. That is a real plan for you to own a home and afford your life for a change.
Mr. Carney, they're coming at you from both sides. What do you?
It may be different, Mr. Poilievre. You spent years running against Justin Trudeau on the carbon tax, and they're both gone. Okay, they're both gone. And we're in a new
impersonation. We're with the same policies tonight.
Very different. Look, I'm a very different person from Justin Trudeau. Focus is on results.
Were you his economic
advisor?
advisor?
How to drive results in the housing market? You've got to change the model of building. You've got to increase the financing for housing developers, $25 billion on the table for those housing developers, $10 billion for deeply affordable homes, cutting development charges in half, lowering the cost of the building of those homes by 20%, and lowering the emissions and the run costs of those homes by another 20%. This is how you drive affordability. This is how you bring young people back into the housing.
Yeah, exactly and then Mr. Singh.
You claim to be very different from Mr. Trudeau. Now, the point is to show that you are any better than Mr. Trudeau. You claim to have a lot of experience in many things, and you know things. Last time we had somebody saying that they knew things. It was a senator.
Ganging up on him.
Killed the law that protected supply management because they knew better than us and were elected by nobody, exactly like you are today. You say that you are a great crisis manager. Which one? I heard of nothing. As far as I know, BRICS happened, even if you were against it. You say you are a great negotiator. What have you negotiated but fiscal paradises in Bermudas or Cayman Islands? You have to prove something, and you have to reveal what you own in those companies if you want people to believe you.
Mr. Singh, you wanted it.
Yes, returning to the topic of housing. Now, it's very important, obviously, we need to build homes
done
that people
with
can afford. Mr. Poilievre had the opportunity to show us what he could do. He was the Minister of Housing under Stephen Harper. And during that time, guess how many homes he built? He built 6 homes in that entire time. This is not something you can trust to build homes. He built 6 homes.
200,000.
And this has been confirmed again and again. He built 6 homes. That's it. Now, the problem, though, with Mr. Carney is, while he's laid out a plan, the problem is that when he was the chair of Brookfield Investments, this is a company that made a strategic decision to buy up affordable homes in cities like Toronto, where people were paying a decent rent. And they purposely bought those homes, kicked out the tenants, and jacked up the rents. That is not someone you can trust, sadly, to deal with the housing crisis when Mr. Carney, you profited off of it.
We're going to get responses here. Mr. Poilievre first, Mr. Carney second.
And he moved it.
First of all, Mr. Singh, the Toronto
right
Star, the Toronto Star debunked your falsehoods.
No, it was 6 homes.
And I appreciate neither Liberals or NDP are very good with math, but in that year, the year I was the minister, if I could,
which is great.
the year I was,
Singh, let's let him answer.
In the year I was,
high enough, though.
the year I was minister, we had 200,000 homes built, and guess what the average price of a home was at the time? $450,000.
And guess what happened at the end of the Conservative reign?
One bedrooms rented out for $900, and that's since that time. Housing costs have actually doubled under the Liberals.
They doubled
and
now we have
Mr. Carney making tens of billions of dollars of spending promises that will ultimately continue to build bureaucracy. We don't need more bureaucracy in Ottawa. We tried that for 10 Liberal years, Mr. Carney. What we need is to build homes in communities. And that means axing taxes on home building and getting the government out of the way so that builders can actually build.
I think,
Mr. Carney, you are on housing. We need a change, and you, sir, are not a change.
Mark Carney.
I'm going to pick up on that. I think the answer was quite revealing. The first thing is that it's an attitude towards housing that absolutely ignores affordable housing, deeply affordable housing, issues with vulnerable people, ignores the rental market, ignores all other aspects of it. So the 6 are the relevant. Mr. Singh is absolutely right. The 6 are the relevant.
200,000.
The 200,000 are a different part of the housing market. There are many Canadians. There are many Canadians at different income levels. The second thing it reveals is a miscatalyzed enormous private investment. And that is what we need to do to solve the housing crisis. It happens to be what we need to do as a whole to address the economic crisis that's been forced on us by President Trump.
Mr. Blanchet?
Yeah. You have spoken much more than I have, so I won't ask a question. I will make a statement instead. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying that you cannot do what you pretend that you are able to do. We just have no proof so far. I'm saying quite clearly that you cannot be entitled to do it alone. You're entitled to all power in your 2 hands. You cannot go out there and fix things for Canada and Quebec without being seriously checked by serious people. You cannot go out there and speak for Quebec without Quebec having its own strong voice to protect itself and to promote its different economy. So if you want to collaborate, let's say right now that whatever happens, even if minority government happens, you will be a partner with different Quebec economy and IT, which you have been not interested in for the economic part and not respectful for the identity.
Let me get Mr. Singh in at this point. Can you tell us what's the first thing you would do to make life more affordable for Canadians?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do, and I've laid out some of those things. I think fundamentally, I'm the only person on stage that not only fought for real relief for people in terms of affordability, I'm the only one that fought for pharmacare that actually makes life more affordable by giving people medication coverage, dental care that gives people more affordability by letting them access their services if you're a senior and a kid. I fought for childcare to make sure people could afford childcare. All measures that Mr. Poilievre voted against, all measures that Mr. Blanchet voted against. So if you want someone that's going to fight for you in Ottawa to actually make life more affordable, you can't entrust all the power to Mr. Carney. He doesn't have a track record of making life more affordable for people, but we do. So vote for a New Democrat, and we'll continue this work to make life more affordable for you, while the Conservatives and the Bloc have voted against those measures to make life affordable, because that's not who they care about.
Some part of it is true, but still you haven't done anything.
The number one expense for families today is taxes, more than they spend on food, clothing, and shelter combined. This after 10 years of Liberal tax increases. We can't afford a fourth term of high liberal taxes. That's why conservatives have a plan for change. And that plan includes
voted against every measure to help people out.
Cutting income taxes by 15% for the average worker and seniors, saving a working couple up to $2,000, rewarding hard work again. Because hard work is actually being punished. Is actually being punished because of the very high taxes. Now, the Liberals promised 10 years ago they would lower them. They actually raised taxes on 9 out of 10 Canadians. We need a change in this country because your hard work should once again pay off with a powerful paycheck that buys you an affordable affordable home,
so you want to save
on
people
a safe street,
$2,000,
and that's what we will deliver.
You want to save people $2,000, but cut their dental care,
That's
which
false.
is thousands of dollars.
False.
Cut their child care, which is thousands of dollars. Cut pharmacare coverage, which is thousands of dollars.
False.
That's not a very good math deal right there. You're gonna save people $2,000, but cost them tens of thousands of dollars. That's why you cannot afford conservatives.
not
You
how it
certainly
works.
can't trust the Liberals
Mark
on their
Carney's
own.
turn.
You need new Democrats.
Mark Carney.
I'm going to reinforce that point, and then I'll respond to Mr. Blanchet. Childcare in this country, $3,000 to $10,000 a year for a family, depending on where you live.
Province, jurisdiction.
Depending on where you live, that's what's being saved there. $800 per trip to the dentist. We've expanded dental
Province,
care to 8 million Canadians. 8 million Canadians.
Because New Democrats.
Pharmacare. These are fundamental issues for affordability. We're talking about affordability and taking them off in order.
That's why you need new
tax.
That's
Quebec,
not what I've said.
and in
I will be
terms
cutting
of
income taxes
working with Quebec,
for Canadians.
yes, absolutely. Throughout the short time I've been Prime Minister, working directly with the Premier of Quebec, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, our Minister of Finance are from Quebec. Quebec and Quebec issues, whether it's
Why
supply
haven't you answered
management,
Mr.
language,
Legault's letter? He asked 5 things in the letter. He reduced his expectations.
We're talking about,
and you did not even answer him. And tonight, you are so much in love with Quebec.
Steve, the question that Canadians have to ask.
Why vote for conservatives?
That's funny.
He's got the Mr. Singh, sorry, he has the floor. Yeah.
Of course, French is not his first language, but it's funny how he says it.
Of liberal promises. Can you afford food? Is your housing more affordable than it used to be? What is your cost of living like compared to what it was a decade ago? And are you prepared to elect the same Liberal MPs, the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal staffers all over again for a fourth term? Mr. Carney, Justin Trudeau's staffers are actually here with you at this debate in Montreal, writing the talking points that you are regurgitating into the microphone. How can we possibly believe that you are any different than the previous 10 years of Liberal government?
25 seconds left in this segment for you to respond to that.
Look, I do my own talking points. Thank you very much. The biggest risk we have to affordability, the biggest risk we have to this economy is Donald Trump. So first and foremost, we've got to get that right.
Donald.
Secondly, we need to do it in a way that brings everyone along together. That means preserving pharmacare, dental care, child care, reinforcing health care, spending our
intrusion in Quebec jurisdiction over and again. I like if we're any better than we are.
The clock
is there
on
one thing Canadians can do that Quebecers cannot do? You are doing intrusions in our jurisdiction with our money, pretending you are better. And most of the time you try to copy what we did with our own money against us. What's that? As a policy, don't you have your own things to care about?
That really is time for this segment. I wanted to be polite and let everybody finish their points, but
far
we got to move
Getting
on.
heated.
Thank
Getting
you.
heated.
Okay, that ends section
Oh,
2.
Monsieur
Up next, public
Blanchet,
safety
bravo,
and security.
bravo. I like it.
Fight crime, to protect Canadians, and to build communities that are safe, secure, and strong.
Keep crime, drugs, stolen cars, and other illegal substances out of our country.
We're going to invest in our borders, and that means hiring more border officers.
Resources are in short supply, not enough staff. This is not the nice way to treat people who come to our border.
Okay, same format, one-on-one questions and then open debate. Monsieur Blanchet, you get to go first in this one. Public safety and security. For a lot of people, that means the fentanyl crisis. I'd like to know what you could contribute to ending that crisis in this country.
the fentanyl crisis is a very serious issue, which is a bit less important in Quebec than it is in British Columbia. I think the whole border thing is the real issue. Immigration is a very important issue for Quebecers. Immigration has to be dealt with in an orderly fashion. Our borders are not dealt with in an orderly fashion. The rules are not respected. The rules are unclear. Some rules even invite people to hide for 2 weeks illegally before coming out. Some things has to be done. The situation of one person asking for asylum may take as much as 4 years without us reducing the number in order to deal with them in a human way. The services for every citizen in Quebec are being reduced because we cannot afford the fact that we are receiving much, much more people in Quebec from this specific type of immigration than we can afford, and we cannot teach them French.
That's time, Mr. Blanchet. We can, of course, return to the immigration issue during open debate should you choose to. Mr. Carney, question for you. The liberal gun buyback policy is not considered a success by many people. Reviving it is in your platform. Why would it work this time?
Yeah, I think, well, what we've seen with that policy is some success at the commercial level, but not at the individual level, because it hasn't been, in my opinion, it hasn't been organized properly, and it needs to be organized properly. And I've instructed the Minister of National Security and Public Safety in order to do that. So part of this is a different focus of government, a focus on results, a focus on clear milestones in the short term. Let me make a broader point, though, on gun, which is that we have a problem with guns coming over borders, which is why we've tightened our borders. We have an issue, though, with a gun industry that is continually coming up with new forms of assault rifles, mass killing machines. We banned over 2,000 of these. Every single time
that's your war machines, buddy,
in the House of Commons on gun control, Mr. Poilievre has voted against it. You can't be tough on crime unless you're tough on guns.
Mr. Poilievre, you can come back on that in the
I
open
blame
debate
the companies, not the criminals,
in this segment
and the illegal
Indigenous
market.
people are statistically overrepresented in our corrections system. Are you concerned that your tough on crime platform will make that worse?
I'm concerned that Indigenous people are disproportionately the victims of crime.
Oh, of course.
I give you the example of a wonderful group of Indigenous
their
people
lands
who came under
usually
attack
come
in
through.
Saskatchewan, and many of them were murdered. Killer was out of jail after 60 prior convictions. This is the result of 10 years of liberal laws that allow the same offenders to be released dozens and dozens of times, even when it's known they are a danger. We can't risk a fourth liberal term of soft on crime policies. We need a change.
The lucky crime guy.
The Conservative plan for change.
I guess there's
will bring in a
criminals.
3 strikes you're outlaw. 3 convictions for serious crimes, you go to jail for at least 10 years, maybe for life, no chance of parole or bail. We will bring in life sentences for traffickers of fentanyl, human beings, and guns.
Must have affected a lot of families.
Secure our borders to keep the illegal
Thank
guns
you, Mr. Poilievre. That's time. Mr. Singh, your question is about the RCMP, because you've got RCMP reform in your platform. What, in your view, is the problem with the RCMP?
Well, some of the basis for this is the concern that's been raised in more rural communities and northern communities that there have been some serious concerns about violence or inappropriate use of force when it comes to the execution of their duties. We want to make sure that we've got a top-tier police force that provides security and safety to those communities in a way that's sensitive and understanding of the communities they're serving. I also think what's very important is for Indigenous communities, Indigenous policing. This is an area of deep concern. I think everyone in our country should be safe. You should be able to be safe at home, safe when you go to work, safe if you take public transit, safe for your kids to be able to play in the local playground. And that's something I'm committed to. And the other area that I'm focused on when it comes to public safety is making sure we prevent crime before it happens. And that's why we want to see increased investments in our border security. We saw under the Conservatives, they cut 1,100 border officers in one day. So that prevented our ability to keep our borders safe. That stops those materials from
Mr.
coming
Singh,
into the
that's
country.
time. Not sure it was about the RCMP, but maybe we can get back to that during the open debate segment, which we go to right now. And Mr. Poilievre, you get the first word on this one. And it sort of dovetails on the last answer you gave, which is, You have pledged to be the first prime minister in this country to use the notwithstanding clause, setting aside charter rights of, as you call them, multiple murderers. Why do you think that's necessary?
To be clear, I want to uphold the charter rights of Canadians under Section 7 to life, liberty, and security of the person. Right now, that right is violated by multiple murderers who are given discounts.
Wow.
The case in question was a gentleman who went into a mosque and shot dead 6 innocent worshipers. He got, according to this ruling, only one 25-year sentence, meaning he can be out in his 50s. He only serves 4 years for every murder that he carried out. That is outrageous. And I will use the constitutional powers that are created for this purpose to ensure that mass murderers stay in maximum security penitentiary for life. They will only come out in a box. We will also pass tough new laws that prevent repeat offenders from getting out. If you commit 3 offenses under the 3 strikes law I propose, you will not be allowed out of jail until you prove that you are drug-free, that you are behaved perfectly, and that you've learned an employable skill, and you've served a 10-year sentence. We cannot allow liberal crime and chaos to go on terrorizing our communities. What we need is a real plan for change so that we can bring back the safety and the security that Canadians used to take for granted.
Let me get Mr. Carney to respond to that. Do you think that's an appropriate use of the notwithstanding clause of the Charter?
I think that the one of the core responsibilities of the federal government, Prime Minister, is to defend the fundamental rights and liberties of Canadians. And those fundamental rights and liberties of Canadians are outlined in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is 43 years old literally today. I think it's a very dangerous slope to override judgments of the Supreme Court of Canada. In fact, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms exists to protect Canadians from people like us on the stage, politicians who may use their power to override fundamental rights. And the issue in using by the federal government, I'll stop here, is not where you start, but where will you stop?
Mr. Poilievre, I should get Mr. Poilievre on that. Is it a slippery slope if you use it in this case?
I must say, I would be quite interested too, because Mr. Carney said that he didn't want us to use the notwithstanding clause before adopting a law. And yesterday he said that he felt that it was wrong to use the notwithstanding clause after a law is adopted. So if we cannot use it before and we cannot use it after, it means that Mr. Carney believes that we should never use it. But it is very important. And the Ford case is clear. The Constitution says how it should be used, but never how or what we will do with it, because it's the prerogative of the provinces. So do you want the Supreme Court to overrule another judgment of the same Supreme Court because you don't like it? Because that would be being the hell of a politician as you define them.
Well, let me just start by saying, first of all, yeah, thank you. I just started by saying, let's not let Mr. Poilievre get away with making this ludicrous claim that anyone on this stage thinks that violent crime should get a less severe penalty. Obviously, that is not a special position that he's taking. Everyone agrees that horrible crimes should have horrible sentences. Judges are equipped to do that. So don't let Mr. Poilievre's rhetoric confuse people. Obviously, everyone agrees that if someone does something horrible, they should pay a horrible price for it. There should be appropriate sentence that's put in place by a judge. But what I'm concerned about is all of what Mr. Poilievre is talking about is after the fact. Now, there's heinous things that happen, and there needs to be severe penalties put in place. But we also need to keep communities safe. And that's what my focus is. Well, how do we stop crime before it happens? Much of the violent crime that's committed is committed by illegal handguns and firearms that come across the border. Now, Mr. Poilievre has admitted that as well, that it is illegal handguns and illegal weapons that are used in violent crime. So our plan is, let's stop those illegal weapons getting into our country in the first place. And the way we do that is by having stronger border security officers and having more people on the border. Mr. Pierre Poilievre, when he was in power in the Conservatives, they cut the number of border officers. They reduced the number, weakening our borders.
Keeping an eye on time
can't
here.
trust them.
Let's
to
get
do
back
these
to
type of
Mr.
things.
Poilievre on the issue of whether in using the notwithstanding clause under these circumstances would be a kind of a slippery slope and encourage politicians to use it more?
No, we will use it to protect the charter rights of law-abiding Canadians. I'm interested in the rights of victims. Mr. Carney seems to be very interested in the rights of criminals. He says that it's dangerous for me to ensure that mass murderers stay behind bars for life. You know what's dangerous? Turning them loose on our streets. I don't think you appreciate, sir, the chaos that is unfolding in communities. In Toronto right now, the police have been forced to tell people to just let the thief steal the car. When they break into the house, just take the keys. Just let them take the keys so that you don't get hurt. People are living in terror in many of our communities precisely because of the catch and release bail law, C-75,
Jail,
which
no
requires
bail.
judges release the accused at the earliest opportunity under the least onerous conditions. Every single member of your Liberal caucus and your Liberal cabinet voted in favor of this bill, and they are all determined to keep it in place despite constant promises to the contrary. Mr. Carney, Canadians deserve to live in peace and security. That is the right that I'm fighting for a change.
I'm fighting for that as well. And let me be specific about two things that have been raised. The first is with respect to these issues of car theft, home invasion, and I'll use the the GTA area where there has been sharp increase. How do you attack that? You attack it several ways. One, you increase the criminal penalties for that happening, particularly if you're part of a gang, particularly if you use a firearm.
And you will do that?
And we're doing so. We've committed to doing so. You put in place a reverse onus in terms of bail, so that it has to be proven that there's not a risk, which we've also committed to. And then you go to what Mr. Singh was talking about, which is we have to reinforce our frontiers. That's why we're committing to an extra 1,000 Canada Border Service agents, an extra 1,000 RCMPs. That's why, as part of the broader fentanyl initiative, where we've added to the RCMP there, we've added drones, we're adding helicopters, we're adding surveillance, and we're going to the other end of the chain with respect to car theft, which is tightening security at the ports. This is what we need. In order to get results, you need to focus at both ends of the chains in federal.
Singh.
Thank you very much. I want to talk about one of the issues that has come up.
Oh, come in, whoever came in.
Of the public safety concerns around the overdose crisis and how this is devastating our communities. We're seeing so many lives being lost. In that, we know that one of the ways to address that is by investing in some of the solutions like mental health services and rehabilitation services. Services keep our communities safe, having access to those good services. Both Mr. Carney and Mr. Poilievre are proposing cutting government spending and cutting those services. That's not going to make our communities safer. We need to see better investments in rehabilitation services, more investments in mental health. We need to respond to this serious crisis in our country with care and compassion. I've met with Moms Stop the Harm, an organization of moms that have lost their children to this opioid overdose crisis. They've literally had their children have died because of this. And they're saying we need to do everything possible to save lives, to stop this death from happening. And I think we need to listen to those moms. And that's my commitment.
Ms. Blanchet.
Two things as rapidly as possible. First, we believe that we should act on crime gangs and organizations, defining them as we do for terrorist organization. We have to protect our kids from the violence of those gangs, from the drugs being sold by those gangs, from the guns and whatever else being stolen
by those gangs.
Sale being by those gangs.
Sold?
And not sold, being, purchased a thing and selling, sold by those gangs. And we mostly have to protect our kids from being recruited by those gangs, becoming violent at 13 and 14 and 16 years old, because this is the real fear of parents like I am. This is a very dangerous situation. I want to come back to immigration because we said that we would come back to immigration. You remember the Century Initiative, a sad memory. Officially, they said that they had not considered Quebec difference. They had not considered Quebec language. They wanted Canada to be a 100 million people country by the end of the century.
Wow.
Mr. Barton told me himself that he had not even thought about the Quebec difference in that analysis. And one of his closest collaborators is now a close counselor to Mr. Carney, which seems to be part of that kind of project or ideology. So it is impossible for Canada to have all those people come into Canada. It is impossible for Quebec to receive all those people. And in Quebec, we have the language and values and secularity of the state issue, which is very important.
Secularity.
So I say, pause. Let's do things properly. Let's receive migrants in an orderly fashion and successfully as a measure of respect for them also.
Mr. Poilievre, you wanted a word.
Of course.
I speak to families all the time who are terrified by the scourge of drugs and illegal guns. And we know those guns are not Grandpa Joe's hunting rifle. So when the Liberals try to ban hunting rifles, they're really going after the wrong people. 90% of guns that come in that are used in crime are smuggled illegally over the porous, Liberal-run borders. And that's why the police, it's not true. And that's why the police actually, if I could, the police actually endorsed me. The police in Barrie, in Peel, in Sault Ste. Marie have all endorsed me because they know that I will go after the gun smugglers and criminals with 2,000 extra frontline border guards that will stop the guns from coming in. But unlike the Liberals and NDP, I will not ban hunting rifles.
Haven't done anything.
The Liberals want to protect. I want to protect Canadians from criminals. The Liberals want to protect turkeys from hunters. I think we know which one makes the most sense.
Quick intervention, Mr. Carney. Then I got a question for each of you before this.
Turkeys from hunters.
We absolutely fully support hunting and rights of hunters and Indigenous Canadians. But I want to raise an issue, which is a serious issue, talking about safety. There are people, we're in Montreal, in Toronto, across this country, who fear going to their synagogue, fear going to their community center, fear taking their children, leaving their children in school. And this has to stop. This is it's totally unacceptable. So what we're proposing is to make it a criminal offense to threaten or to impede anyone from being near or going to their place of worship, their school, their community center.
That's your fault, and your team was behind you now.
We have to do it.
You're going to try to say what
we should be doing as Canadians, of course. But we will put that in place.
Let me get
back. And this is a fundamental issue with respect
Let me get 10 seconds from each of you before
the B team, guys. We're not the B team. We should be the A
security
team.
Threat to Canada right now. 10 seconds each. Mr. Poilievre.
The physical security threat to our country is the rampant crime wave that is running out of control. After the last decade, we had a 116% increase in gun crime. We need to lock up the criminals.
I got to hold you to 10 seconds. Mr. Carney?
Well, we're in a security section. I think we didn't have a chance to talk about anything internationally. I think the biggest security threat to Canada is China.
China, you say?
Yeah.
Mr. Singh?
Biggest security threat, illegal guns and drugs coming across the border, and cuts to services that would make our public safety and security even worse.
All true so
Last
far.
word, Mr. Blanchet.
The fact that neither Quebec or Canada is able to protect itself and that we are still dependent and entirely dependent on Americans to protect us.
Merci, Monsieur Blanchet.
That is the end of that section, gentlemen. Up next, energy and climate.
Improving pipelines, getting things built, unleashing production.
We are unlocking major infrastructure projects, including in conventional energy, oil and gas.
We're speaking thousands of dollars a year for each family to pay for the damages of climate change.
We can absolutely build important projects like an east-west energy grid.
Energy and
That's
climate
the commercial.
change. I know how much all of you love talking about pipelines, so here we go. Mr. Singh, to you first. Should Canada build new pipelines to get our oil and gas to market?
Well, it's not an approach I favor with public money. There's not any projects that are on the table, so it's not a specific project to look at. I favor, when it comes to the environment, building an east-west energy grid that connects low-cost energy and allows for families to reduce their electricity costs. But let's put this all in context. We're talking about what our energy solutions are in the context of a climate crisis. And we're not just talking about a climate crisis in the far future. We're living it right now. I remember I met a mom a couple of years ago before I had kids who told me she was worried about taking her kids out on some days because of the forest fires in BC. It meant that it was unsafe for kids to go outdoors. Fast forward to when I became a parent just a couple of years after that, And I literally worry about the same thing. The forest fires we saw a couple years ago meant that many places that didn't see this before saw days where there was such smoke in the air that it was dangerous for kids.
Maybe you should
We've
maintain the
seen
forest
extreme
properly
weather,
like you used
forest
to.
fires, heat domes, floods impacting us. We've got to do everything we can to
Thank you,
protect our
Mr.
future.
Singh. That's time. Mr.
Incompetence,
Polyev,
sir.
where does fighting climate change land on your list of priorities when it comes to expanding energy opportunities in this country?
It lands within our priorities of bringing home jobs while bringing down emissions around the world. Look, the reality is that if we push production out of our country to more polluting countries, it actually makes the problem worse. But that has been exactly the Liberal approach with the anti-development law C-69, of 15 LNG export plants over the last 10 years. We have seen more of those jobs go abroad. I want to bring them home. My plan will be to approve, for example, natural gas liquefaction and export. If we sent our gas to India, for example, to displace half of their demand for electricity, we could reduce emissions by 2.5 billion tons, which is 3 times the total emissions of Canada.
Tons.
That's the way we bring emissions down and jobs up. It's common sense, and now it's time to bring it home.
Thank you, Mr. Polyev. The next question is for Mr. Carney. How would your government fast-track pipelines and mining projects while also following the Supreme Court decision that requires consent of Indigenous communities?
Well, I think the first thing, and this goes back a bit to where we started, which is recognizing that we are in a crisis. We need to act with maximum force and having a process and a consultation, but a consultation with a purpose, which is to identify those projects, those investments of national interest that are really going to move the dial in terms of growth, jobs, energy security, while being consistent with long-term competitiveness, which necessarily means lower carbon. And so part of that process is ensuring that First Nations, Indigenous peoples, are there from the start. It also includes their ability to participate fully in those projects. And that's why, and I can tell, like, you've got to tell on when I've gone on too long, so I'll finish up.
There's plenty of mines out there
That's why
ready.
we're doubling. Our proposal is to double the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program to
checked
$10
in.
billion. What does that
We got
actually mean?
gold,
It means an ability
copper.
for them to invest equity in
my
those
God,
projects.
so
and
much
be full
minerals
partners.
here.
Thank you.
My tell is my clock. My clock is at 0, so that's how it goes. Monsieur Blanchet, do you still oppose pipeline construction in Quebec, even though a majority of Quebecers now apparently say they support it?
We will know about that when we have held the debate about that, which has not begun yet. We are just beginning it. First, we are
Monsieur
hearing
Blanchet,
very creative numbers,
careful.
and we are being fed nonsense. And we will be back to it in a few minutes. But energy, trade, commerce is from south to north or north to south. And it's true in Quebec also. In a little more than 3 years, Donald Trump won't be in office. And there will be not one more pipeline having been built once we get there. So let's be serious, responsible, and we will be back with the numbers. We don't want to pay in Quebec for such monstrosities, which will provide us with nothing.
We now move to open debate, and you all will get a chance or have had a chance to get the first shot at this. Monsieur Blanchet, it is your turn to get the first
Maybe
shot.
it's time to start
Canada
to
has
get
a substantial
somewhere.
supply of critical minerals, which are in high demand. Are you in favor of allowing these minerals to be mined?
Of course. It has to be done properly. Quebec has probably the most important clean phosphate reserves in North America. In Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, it is very important. It has to be exploited. This is the best way to use Paul Saguenay as an infrastructure that we need. We have lithium. Everybody needs lithium. Transportation has to be taken from oil to clean energy. This is what we want to be working on. And it is part of
They could do it even better than the third world countries.
Specifics of Quebec economy. So we are in favor of it. We don't want to pay have been oil and gas by the Liberals of dollars from Quebec. We don't want to pay for the 40 billions of dollars which have been spent by the Liberals on Trans Mountain. It's 9 billions of dollars from Quebec. Those are 16 billions of dollars, of which not $1 has been spent in Quebec to develop a lot more power and wealth for Quebecers with our own money.
We need to let the leader of the Liberals respond.
Well, actually, I was going to pick up on the enormous opportunity that exists in Quebec, exists in Ontario, exists in the north of Canada, really exists across this great nation in terms of critical metals.
New Brunswick,
we are have one of the biggest resources in this country.
St. John.
It's not just enormous economic
Newfoundland?
opportunity, it is a strategic opportunity for Canada. So we have to make a decision, not just to develop it, but how do we develop it and who are our partners for it? Do we become more dependent on the United States, which is what they want? By the way, President Trump this week said he might put a tax on critical metals and minerals, just showing again.
Yeah, but
if I may, and so the discussions
to negotiate.
If I may finish.
Let's let him finish.
Let me finish. So the opportunity includes in Europe and includes in Asia as our partners. Last point.
Wow.
In order to get it done, we'll put in place a first and last mile fund. So these projects are connected to road and rail so they can go quickly to market. And we will have all of the other fast tracking measures in place that I talked about earlier in terms of capital, timing, approvals, so that we can move quickly, we can be stronger at home.
Always with the approval of
I think
Singh has the floor.
We should absolutely take advantage of the fact that we've got incredible amounts of critical minerals in our country. And the way we do that is with any energy project or any project
Funny
of this
how
nature,
everybody's
make
speaking
sure
it
it's got the
loudly
local
now.
community buy-in. It creates good jobs in communities, make sure we are meeting all our environmental needs, and we work with Indigenous partnership. And so I absolutely agree with that. I want to build on something Mr. Blanchet mentioned about the investments that this country has made. What I found very troubling is that the past number of years, the Liberal government record is one where we have spent the most subsidies compared to any other country in the G7 on subsidizing oil and gas. These are highly profitable companies.
You voted
I think that's
for
the
it.
wrong thing to do. We fought against it again and again.
No, you voted
and then
for
the
it.
Liberals have continued to
again.
do it. And so my question really to Mr. Carney is, will you commit to ending oil and gas subsidies?
Yeah.
We should be using that to invest in people, not giving it to highly profitable oil and gas companies.
Yeah, we talked.
I promised Mr. Polyev the next, we'll come back and get that question answered. Mr. Polyev.
Well, Mr. Carney, you point out that Donald Trump has a wrong-headed idea of putting a tax on our mines and our industry, and that is wrong. But so do you. You want to apply a massive industrial carbon tax on Canadian mines, Canadian steel mills, Canadian aluminum plants,
You want to let them
Canadian oil and gas. And your idea is to double the tax that Trump is applying by hitting them a second time. This will do nothing for the environment. It will actually ship our jobs south of the border,
So Mr.
just
Polyer's plan is let them
like
pollute as much as they
President
want.
Trump
Not a good
wants. My plan is to bring that production home here to Canada. For example, I will give a tax credit to low-emitting Canadian industry like Quebec's aluminum, for example, or British Columbia's natural gas, so that we not only bring home the production, but we do it below global average levels of emissions, so that we actually help the environment for our people at this time. That is a sensible, pragmatic approach that puts us in charge of our economic destiny, so we can stand up to the Americans from a position of strength for a change.
Mr. Carney, we've got, hang on a second. I want to give you a chance to speak to Mr. Singh's criticism about oil and gas subsidies and Mr. Polyev's criticism about the industrial carbon tax.
Okay, I'm going to make 3 points. I'll make 4 if you want me to respond to that, but I want to make 3. The first is that I answered this question last night, but I think the puck had already dropped in the Canadians game, so not everyone heard it. Yes, end to oil and gas subsidies.
That's why you need New Democrats.
Secondly, I would have done it independently. Secondly, recognizing that the biggest component of that was the cost of building Keystone. Keystone, which is the pipeline which has helped to increase oil and gas oil exports rather by 50% in this country. That is an asset of the people of Canada. We own it. And the question of what to do it. So it's not a subsidy that has disappeared, it's actually an asset of Canada. I think a third point, though, in terms of where the oil and gas industry, particularly the oil industry, wants to and needs to go, which is to become low carbin in the production and transportation of oil. One of the big projects we need to move forward with is carbon capture and storage, the Pathways project, so that we have oil and gas that is competitive, not just today, 10 years from now and 20 years from now, as the world uses less. We want to have more market share. We need to do that. My government will move that.
By definition, a subsidy isn't when we buy a pipeline. I'm talking about subsidies that go to oil and gas companies. Independent, separate from the country, oil and gas companies. That's what I'm talking about.
The figure you quoted last night included the cost of the pipeline.
Do you want to address
billions
his
of
point?
dollars are spending. We got to stop spending.
Sorry, can we get you to address his point about the industrial carbon tax?
How much will the industrial carbon tax add to the price of a car?
So the first thing I want to say is I'm going to address the broader point. The broader point is the entire absence of a climate plan from Mr. Poilievre, which, by the way, is going to put our industry and our country at a disadvantage as we're looking for new trading partners. Guess what? Most people want to deepen our partnership in Europe, in Asia. Those countries care about whether or not you've made progress. Second thing is, we're designing a program so that the big polluters pay Canadians at home for making responsible climate choices, for retrofitting their home, getting their emissions down, or improving otherwise. And that is smart climate policy. It's better for the big polluters, and it's better for Canadians.
Chair Poilievre.
Mr. Carney didn't answer my question. I asked how much would the
Crumbled all
industrial
over,
carbon tax on Canadian steel add to the price of a car? He won't answer because he knows that it will be very expensive because there's lots of steel in cars. Now, well, Mr. Carney has temporarily
But do you know the answer?
hidden the
you don't know
carbon
the answer
tax.
either. You're just throwing out random questions.
Thousands of
You're just
dollars.
making it up, though. You don't
extra
know.
cost.
I actually do know the answer to that question. He's wrong.
When you add taxes to steel, you raise the price of everything that uses steel. When you add everything, taxes to the price. When you add the carbon tax onto the price of, for example, fertilizer, you increase the price of food. So while Mr. Carney has temporarily hidden the Liberal carbon tax at the pumps while keeping the tax fully in law and planning to raise it after the election, he's also going after a tax on our industry that will ultimately be passed on to you. After a lost Liberal decade of rising costs,
it's passed on
we
to
cannot
us,
afford
right?
a fourth Liberal term. We need a new government that will fully axe the carbon tax, increase the jobs that we have here in Canada, and bring down your cost of living.
We've got just a little over 3 minutes left in this segment. So, Mr. Singh, I want to ask you, do you think climate change is still a priority from Canadians? You're out there. What are you hearing?
Absolutely. You speak to any young person and they think, we're seeing climate crisis in front of us happening right now. You speak to seniors who say, we used to be able to live in our homes without air conditioning, and now we're seeing heat crises in communities that never had worries about extreme weather. We're seeing flooding, we're seeing forest fires like never before. We are living in a climate crisis. So Canadians are absolutely worried about it. As soon as we come into a summer, we start seeing those forest fires again. It's top of mind for Canadians because they're living it, they're seeing it. And I want those Canadians to know, Mr. Carney is not going to end those fossil fuel subsidies unless I'm there to fight back. Mr. Poilievre wants to let big polluters pollute as much as they want, poison our beautiful land, our water, and air. He wants to let them dump into our oceans. I'm going to fight back and defend our environment.
Monsieur Blanchet, on the issue of whether or not people still care about climate change.
I think people should be kept very informed about climate change because we are in a very strange denial situation about climate change, which still exists and is very expensive. And I'm sorry to crash your party, guys, but you are telling fairy tales. Clean oil and gas is a fairy tale. Large-scale carbon sequestration, sorry, I'm French, is a fairy tale. It does not exist. If Alberta wanted to exploit,
he's hilarious how he says things.
Were not a matter of pollution, I wouldn't mind at all. That's their business. Our own powerhouse in terms of energy in Quebec is clean energy. We are the best place in the world to achieve that. Our market is the northeastern part, Democrat part of United States. We want to keep our money to create wealth in Quebec for Quebecers. Let us Mr. be different because we can afford
Monsieur
to be
Blanchet,
different.
let me give, I will get to you because I said I would, but you've taken a couple of hits here and I want to give you a chance to respond to some of the things that people on this side of the stage have said.
Thank you. Well, first of all, we do support protecting the environment. Banning We want to ban the dumping of raw sewage into our waters. We want to hold large corporations to high environmental standards to protect our water and air. But we cannot do that by raising taxes and sending jobs overseas, as Mr. Carney is proposing to do. That has been the approach of the last 10 years of the Liberal government. What the biggest companies that develop our resources say is that we need to repeal the Liberal anti-development law C-69, a law Mr. Carney wants to keep in place. They say we need to repeal the industrial carbon tax and get rid of the Liberal energy cap. We need 6 months approvals in order to to take back energy security and energy sovereignty.
We can summarize that.
Mr. Carney,
Sorry, Mr. Carney, hang on. Last word to Mr. Carney in this segment, please.
Thank you very much. You know, I was born in Fort Smith in the Northwest Territories, just north of what the oil sands became. When I was born and when I was growing up in Edmonton, early days, it was a fairy tale, quote unquote. But you know what happened? Canadian ingenuity, Canadian engineers, Canadian governments, both the federal government and the Alberta government got together and converted this.
The worst pollution
if I may,
in the world.
If I may,
The worst pollution
may I finish? May I finish? May I?
10 more seconds to finish, please. Let him finish his point.
That's the opportunity we have. That's the opportunity we have in carbon capture. That's the opportunity we have in small modular reactors. That's the opportunity we have in hydrogen beyond. This country can be a clean energy superpower. My government will help deliver it.
And that is time for this segment. Gentlemen, let us go to our final theme, which is called Leading in a Crisis.
Canadians know how to weather a storm. Canadians know how to get through a difficult time.
If, at the end of the day, we end up with the balance of power, Quebec is safer than it could be in any other scenario.
Now is not a time for weakness. Now is the time to take back control.
Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves.
Okay, leading in a crisis is a pretty broad theme that allows us to explore many different avenues here. So let's get to it. Mr. Carney, you get the first question this time. We haven't balanced a budget in this country in 17 years, and 10 of those years were under your party. You have pledged to get us to a balanced budget in 3 years. Question is, how?
Do you know how to do maths up in here?
Let me put this in the context of leading in a crisis,
Go ahead,
which
Mr.
is
Leader.
in a crisis, you got to plan for the worst. Worst is that the U.S. actually does want to take us over. Secondly, you got to have a plan to build, and that'll include a fiscal plan, and I will get to that in a second. The third thing is you need to respond in a crisis with overwhelming force. You need to think big. You need to move rapidly. The things we've been discussing today are a subset of what we can and should do as a nation, and we can deliver. And government can play a role, but its role has to be catalytic. And so our approach is that we will slow the rate of spending. It's been growing at 9% a year, operational spending, program spending, away from transfers, into 9% a year. We'll slow that to 2%. We will focus on a small amount of capital spending by the federal government in order to drive enormous private investment up to $500 billion by 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Ukraine surely constitutes a crisis. Leading in a time of crisis, Mr. Poilievre, question for you. If the United States withholds support from Ukraine going forward, do you believe Canada should commit more to assist?
I believe we should continue to support Ukraine. Our party supported donating missiles that the Canadian military was decommissioning. We supported funds and other armaments to back the Ukrainians in the defense of their sovereignty. We also need to rebuild our own Canadian military because the Russians want to make incursions into our waters. We'll be buying 4 massive Arctic icebreakers. I'll be opening the first Arctic base since the Cold War in Canada, CFB Iqaluit. We're going to double the size of the Arctic Rangers and fill the vacancies in our Canadian armed forces. We need a change to rebuild our military, which has been
Hi, Rolu, I miss you.
The cuts and the mismanagement of the last 10 years. But we can have a change because we have the best soldiers, sailors, and airmen in the world, and they will have full backing from my government if you give me the honor of becoming Prime Minister.
I may come back to that one in the open forum because I'm not sure we got an answer about Ukraine on that one, but okay.
Well,
going on. Monsieur Blanchet.
The answer was yes.
We'll get more details, perhaps, as we go forward. Mr.
Don't
Blanchet,
forget to
given
hit
the
the
U.S.
like
trade war,
button,
should
Rolu,
any
if
talk
you're
of
coming
a
in.
referendum on Quebec independence be put on pause?
That one is easy. It will happen only after the negotiation is over, and that's a good thing. I want to say I support the idea. We must help Ukraine, but we also must help the civilians of Gaza, and we must destroy Hamas, which is a terrorist organization. You know what? I don't want to be the leader of Canada. You will understand that. I don't want to be prime minister, but I can offer to be a partner, a responsible partner, a collaborative partner. If Quebec is respected in its differences, in its aluminum industry and lumberwood industry and culture and French language and values of secularity of the state, which is the price to be paid in order to have real equality, then if we are respected, we will be a partner, and then even Canada will be stronger in its negotiation against Donald Trump. This is what I am offering. Respect us.
Mr. Singh, I watched last night's debate. You seem very eager to talk about healthcare, so let's talk a little more healthcare right now. You have made many promises on healthcare. If a province says to you, we'll take your money for healthcare, but not your conditions on how to spend it, what do?
We've got to negotiate. We can't be giving away money without clear conditions. We're in a healthcare crisis right now, and a crisis that is hurting people across this country. People are waiting desperately in line in emergency rooms for hours and hours. Seniors are waiting for years and years to get the care that they need for surgeries that would remove pain or help them deal with mobility issues. We're in a serious crisis. Healthcare workers are burnt out. They are overstretched. And what we're seeing is more and more privatization, and that is hurting our public universal healthcare system. So we've got to fight back against it. We cannot allow our public money to go to a for-profit private clinic lining the pockets of a rich CEO or investors instead of going towards care. We need to make sure that we are investing in solutions where care gets to people, not profiting those at the very top. And so that's my commitment. I'm going to fight to make sure we defend our healthcare against the threats of Americanization and privatization.
Okay, we now go to open forum debate, and perhaps, Mr. Poilievre, you get the first word here. This might be a good time to put a little more flesh on the bone of what you think Canada could do for Ukraine if the U.S. backs out.
Yes, and my answer is that we should continue to support Ukraine. We don't need to follow the Americans in everything they do. When they're wrong, then we will stand on our own and with other allies. And with respect to Ukraine, that of course includes support with intelligence, equipment, armaments, but it also includes defunding Putin. Right now, Vladimir Putin has a monopoly on the European energy market because, frankly, the Liberals blocked exports of Canadian natural gas off the Atlantic coast. They blocked multiple projects. I would rapidly approve those projects on national security grounds so that we can actually ship Canadian natural gas over to Europe, break European dependence on Putin, defund the war, and turn dollars for dictators back into paychecks for our people.
Mr. Carney, you wanted to add?
Well, I want to go to the situation in Ukraine because it's very important. We've been a steadfast, Canada has been a steadfast ally, and Canadians have stepped up, welcoming Ukrainians into their homes and supporting them in other ways. You know, in my first month as Prime Minister, we joined the coalition of the willing to support Ukraine as the U.S. stepped back. So led by France, the United Kingdom, with Ukraine, number European nations, Australia, ourselves, New Zealand. That's an example of how the new world is going to be. Canada participating in these areas and helping. It also means open trade. Mr. Poilievre voted against free trade agreement with Ukraine. It means aid for Ukraine. Mr. Poilievre wants to cut foreign aid, including for Ukraine, or not. He didn't mention support for aid for Ukraine. We have to stand by them. We have to be there, and this government has been.
Mr. Singh.
New Democrats absolutely support standing with Ukraine, and will continue to do that. But I appreciate the opportunity in talking about leadership in crisis, talk about many of the crises that we're up against. And one of the crises we're up against in our country with the threat of Donald Trump, with the threat of the trade war, and with the privatization and Americanization of our healthcare system.
Not what
is
you
the
guys
healthcare
did in
system.
the past.
And
to
what
our
we have learned today, Mr. Carney mentioned slowing operation spending. That's a cut to services. He said his plan. He has a plan to balance the operating budget within 3 years. That's going to require massive cuts to spending. We calculated that at $43 billion in cuts. In fact, Rosemary Barton, when he was on the show on February 16th, he said he would cut spending. He said it would be in operations. He defined it. as transfers in health.
COVID
And finally,
destroyed so
longtime
many
Liberal
businesses.
and former House Leader Karina Gould said that Mr. Carney's plans would mean massive cuts. That's the only way to achieve it. So, Mr. Carney, do you think it is leadership to cut health care at a time when it is in crisis? I think it is wrong. We can't do that.
We will not cut transfers for healthcare. We will not cut healthcare spending, full stop.
But
We'll
Mr.
have
Carney,
a detail, if I may.
Who do we believe, Mr. Carney today, or the one he spoke on Rosemary Barton's show on February 16th?
I did not.
The one that repeated again that he would cut spending? Who do we believe?
If I may, consistently said we'll preserve all transfers to the provinces, including the increases. We will preserve all the transfers to individuals, including.
You're ganging up on him, it seems like a
so
little.
we're looking at addressing an operational spend, which is about $150 billion. We will address that. We will make it more efficient, and we will do it in 3 years, and we'll balance that budget.
Mr. Blanchet.
I am 6 minutes behind Mr. Carney, so I will speak a little bit longer. First, I will support any initiative which will bring Canada aligned with Europe and NATO in order to be stronger and facing new threats. Good. I believe that 2% won't be enough. I'm not more in favor of war than anybody else, but we have responsibilities, and our main ally is removing himself from the stage. So we have to step up. We have to do our part. I want to go somewhere else entirely, however. I want to ask Mr. Carney, if we're speaking about leadership here, if Quebec and Canada were to say, you are not being given a majority government, there will be more conservatives than you would like, maybe more New Democrats than you would like, and more people from the bloc than you would like. Will you accept, because you don't seem to be very eager about that, to deal with people which basically are more experienced than you are, as legitimate as you are, and would be more representative altogether than you would be being alone in your little kingdom?
Yeah,
and I
you
want
have to be
also
lonely or work with others. Not really a teamwork,
propose
apparently.
to you all guys that
As
1
per
week after the election,
Mr.
1 week after
Blanchet.
the election, we all meet, whatever the result, and we start dealing with this crisis together, because this is what people, either they are from Alberta or Quebec or wherever, this is what people expect from us.
Mr. Carney, is that something you could get behind?
I look forward to meeting with everyone. You're welcome to come, Steve, if you'd like. Week after crisis, but
That's
also,
not
but
very-
in all
that's
seriousness,
not very respectful.
No, but I'll
That's
come.
not very
but I'm
respectful.
coming. I'm coming.
What did I miss?
On peut jaser un peu. Okay, I will. I come to the.
On jase, on jase.
Yeah. Okay. I'll come to the core.
What
Look,
did we miss? Hold on.
in a
I'll
crisis,
translate.
yes, you need a team, and you need to bring the country along with you. So what I did in the first week was to bring the premier.
Sorry, guys.
together.
That's right.
Okay, I look forward to meeting with everyone. You're welcome to come, Steve, if you'd like. Week after crisis, but
That's
also,
not
but
very-
in all
that's
seriousness,
not very respectful.
No, but I'll
That's
come.
not very
but I'm
respectful.
coming. On peut jaser un peu. Okay, I will.
Okay.
I come to the.
On jase, on jase.
Yeah. Okay, I'll come to the core. Look, in a crisis, yes, you need a team, and you need to bring the country along with you. So what I did in the first week was to bring the premiers together, meet with all the Indigenous leaders, and move forward in that context. Now, the question is, who's going to lead out of this? Whoever leads out of this, if I may, Mr. Blanchet, whoever, merci, thank you. Whoever's going to lead out of this is going to need to work with all the provinces, work with labor, work with Indigenous leaders, work with all Canadians to bring them forward in a united front. And if I make this last point, one of the things that has happened, which is a credit to those people at home, is that Canadians are coming together. And it's our responsibility to meet the strength of Canadian unity.
Still lagging. I have one small point to make. You will
We
be
were
elected if
united.
you are
You
elected
guys
in
are
the
the
parliament
ones
where there are other leaders.
thinking.
I don't know if he called you, or
Otherwise.
Mr. Poilev, I don't know if he called you, but before yesterday, you have not spoken to me once, even if I proposed it so many times, But you say, I speak to provinces' leaders. You're not elected in provinces. You are in the parliament where people are to make decisions which might not always suit you. But this is democracy,
Blanchet, I'm
which
going to
you
jump
don't know
in.
too much about.
I'm going to jump in here because I'm noticing what the clock is saying, and you brought up Gaza earlier, and I think our audience would be interested in hearing your views on the other major international crisis facing the world right now.
Before we get that, just to finish up on the healthcare, I just want to speak to healthcare workers right now who are deeply worried about the status of our healthcare system. To Canadians who believe and love our universal public healthcare system, to patients who are stressed out. If you're worried about which Mr. Carney to believe, the one today or the one who spoke on previous shows and said he would cut, vote for New Democrats, and we will fight to defend our healthcare.
I think your supporters would really like to hear what you have to say about this question, and we have less than 5 minutes for it here. What role should Canada play in the other major international crisis in this world, in the Middle East and the war in Gaza? Pierre Poilievre, would you start us off on that? What role can Canada play?
Well, first of all, we must condemn Hamas, and more importantly, the terror sponsors in Tehran who initiated the attacks, the horrific attacks of October 7th. We need to defeat the terrorists so that all the peoples of the world can live in peace and defend the right of, yes, Palestinians to have their own lives free from the oppression of Hamas dictators and Iranian intervention, while Israel has the ability to live in freedom and peace. But I also want to say, we need to get back to the Canadian tradition, which is that when people come to this country, they leave foreign conflicts behind. The rampaging riots targeting Jewish communities is utterly unacceptable, and it points to the growing chaos that we see on our streets after 10 years of incredibly irresponsible liberal policies of weak borders, of dividing people into groups, of saying one thing to one group and the opposite to another, dividing and conquering. We must end that division and unite our people so that everyone feels safe, and that when we come here, we put our foreign conflicts behind and we put Canada
people,
first.
People come from countries from around the world and they care deeply about where they come from, and they should be able to do so. That's a part of being in our country, to have that freedom. Your treatment of Palestinians has been frankly disgusting. Your treatment of people who provide care and service for people in Gaza has been disgusting. On top of that, people in Israel and in Palestine deserve to live in peace and security. And Mr. Carney, to date, you've not acknowledged that what's going on in Gaza is now clearly become a genocide. It's important to call things out as they are, and you've not done that.
Mr. Carney.
We need to work, to go to your question, we need to work with our international partners, maximum pressure, maximum encouragement for an immediate ceasefire. That's the first thing. Encourage the return of all of the hostages, resumption of humanitarian aid. My government put in place $100 million of humanitarian aid, which is ready to go. With respect to where this ultimately goes, yes, two-state solution, but it has to be a viable and free Palestinian state, living side by side in peace and security with the state of Israel. I will underscore one other thing. Mr. Poilievre rightly mentioned Iran. The Iranian sponsors in this region, we have to be clear-eyed about the fundamental risks of Iran and do everything with our international partners to check it and turn it.
Mr. Blanchet.
If we are to work together, we will have to be consistent. The Jewish community in Quebec and Canada is harassed by a very little minority of radical Islamists. And we don't do so much. The law in Canada says that somebody may invite people to be violent, to propose genocide against another people, if they can be hidden behind a religious motivation. They are in agreement with that, they are in agreement with that, they are in agreement with that. And we say it is a crime to invite people to violence and killing other people. And this is what is being done very often in Canada and Quebec with the approval of the Criminal Code of Canada. And we are saying this has to be changed. We have to change what we do before we want people elsewhere to change what they do.
Last minute in the segment, Mr. Poilievre.
This is about crises and leadership. And one crisis we have is in immigration. Because of this Liberal government's commitment to a radical policy called the Century Initiative, which seeks to bring our population up to 100 million people, They have allowed massive overcrowding in our communities. That has caused housing shortages, job
Don't
shortages,
blame immigration
and
for
healthcare
the
shortages.
fault of your government.
And if I could,
the fact that you did
sorry,
not
I didn't
invest in
interrupt
housing,
you. I did
built
not
6
interrupt you,
homes.
sir. I did
That's
not
wrong.
interrupt you.
Don't
It is-
blame.
I do not
people.
blame.
You're
If I could,
Let him finish.
I do not blame immigrants. I blame the Liberal government, which brought this policy on. And Mr. Carney wants to continue with the Century Initiative. This is crazy. We have to get back to normal levels of immigration, get rid of the fraud in the temporary immigration system, and ensure that the people who come here can arrive in numbers that we can house, employ, and care for. That's how it always was, and that's how we're going to restore
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. That is our time for this segment. Those are our 5 themes, but we are not done yet. We are entering the next section of our debate tonight, what we're calling the leader's choice, something a little bit different. Each of you will get the chance to ask a question, any question, of any other leader. You can then debate the answer, and each one on one will last for 3 minutes. So, Mr. Singh, you have the first option here. Who do you want to ask your question of?
Mr. Carney.
Go for it.
Mr. Carney, as chair of Brookfield Investments, your company is one of the biggest tax dodgers in Canada. As chair, you approved decisions where Brookfield Investments bought up affordable homes, kicked out the tenants, and jacked up the rates. As prime minister, one of the first things you did was a tax cut that helped out mostly millionaires. And you have a plan to cut services for people. I expect that of Mr. Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. That's very much a conservative plan. But my concern is that doesn't sound like what people want for a Liberal leader. So my question to you is, Mr. Carney, whose side are you really on?
Thank you very much for that question, Mr. Singh. I'm on the side of Canadians. I'm in this for Canadians. I work for Canadians.
But your track record doesn't show that, though.
No, I have a track record of public service for this country. Go back to something Mr. Blanchet referenced earlier, which is have I resolved any crises? We're in Quebec. If you ask anyone in the finance industry, if you ask anyone in government in Quebec in 2008, they'll know that I resolved the biggest crisis in Quebec. Yeah,
you want to have fun.
But
60 million.
But I'm in fairness with Mr.
This is for these two.
Yes, I have had a long career in the private sector. I'm proud of that career. I've always acted with integrity, and it brings me with experience that I can apply in this moment of crisis.
And you certainly have served the country. But the problem is, who have you served? You've served to benefit those at the very top. You jacked up the price of homes for people living in affordable homes as a strategic decision. You dodged taxes. And then your decisions as prime minister show you're not prioritizing people, but you're prioritizing big business, billionaires.
So what have we done as a government directly? So we've gone directly to workers using all of our proceeds from the tariffs, committing all of them for workers, the workers most affected in industries.
The employment insurance isn't
unlike others who plan to use them to cut taxes. We are focused on
the EI is not high enough, though. You have to accept that. Right now,
there will be additional programs. I am fully confident that the next government, whatever government is formed, or certainly if I'm in the next government, we will make additional programs.
But you didn't do that so far, though.
Well, I can't. You couldn't. Well, you couldn't, given that we're in an election process.
You could have increased the amount, though.
May I make a core point here, if I may, which is that when you think about workers here today and people watching at home, particularly younger people,
20
there is an
seconds
enormous
to finish.
opportunity in the trades, in the skilled trades. We are going to build this country in a way that has not been seen before. We are literally talking about hundreds of thousands, not jobs, but careers in the trade. And that's why we're investing in apprenticeships and mid-career.
But I think people are worried, Mr. Carney, if New Democrats aren't there to force Liberals to make sure they remember about people they will forget.
Gentlemen, that is time. Thank you for that. Mr. Blanchet,
You
you
took
have the
up
next
almost
question.
half
To
of the
whom would you
time.
like to put it?
Mr. Carney, you avoided quite
question.
I would say skillfully the questions of Mr.
Of course,
Singh. But first,
Blanchet.
let me correct something. In 2008, not so much by your decision, $10 billion were given to car industry in Ontario, while 60 millions, not billions of dollars, were lent to lumberwood throughout the whole of Canada. I don't believe that's the right way to manage a crisis. since you did not recoup the money from the car industry. Then, you have been the manager of Brookfield. It's supposed to be a green investment fund. But we now know that 50% of the investments of Brookfield is in fossil fuel. It's not so green. You seem to want to support oil and gas industry. That's interesting. You want to support prefab housing, and it's also in the investments of Brookfield, but not in Canada. You want to support nuclear power, smaller reactors, which are more dangerous, by the way. And Brookfield has investments in Westinghouse. You have hidden the money of Brookfield and Canadian, billions of dollars lost for Canada. You are having your taxes being paid by families, workers, elders in Canada and Quebec instead of paying your own taxes. So I want to know, will you, before the election, reveal all details of your assets as Mr. Singh has done, as Mr. Poiliev has done, and as I have done? We have a right to know under those circumstances.
Let's let her.
First is, I want to say a word about, I'll say a word about Brookfield. You know, this is a Canadian success story. It is the largest infrastructure investor and developer in the world. It is one of the largest, if not the largest, developer of renewable power in the world. And who benefits from that? That's Canadian pensioners. That's Quebec pensioners. That is teachers. That is firefighters. It is a series of people, including individuals on this stage, benefit from that. Now, always acted with integrity, served the shareholders of Brookfield when I was there. I have left that. I have followed all the rules well in advance.
So
I have followed all the rules well in advance.
Let's reveal your assets like we all did.
And working for the people of Canada.
What do you own? Why don't you tell Canadians and Quebecers what you own?
Monsieur Blanchet, we're moving on to Mr. Poiliev now, who has his opportunity to ask the question of whomever he'd like here, and that will be?
Mr. Carney. But if I could begin by starting by setting the stage. The choice in this election is after
even
the
leaders
decade of rising cost and crime and a falling economy under America's thumb. Do we want to elect them to a fourth term? Or do we want to change? Change so that you can afford food and homes. Change so that you can be safe on your street and change so that your paycheck grows faster than your cost of living. Change with a new conservative government. Because Mr. Carney is not change. Mr. Carney, in 2020, it was recorded, you began advising Justin Trudeau. It's still on the Liberal Party website today that you are Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. They might want to update your website on that. On June 3rd of 2021, you said that inflation would be a sign of economic progress. And you advised governments, including Justin Trudeau's, your Liberal government, to print money, which led to the worst inflation crisis in a generation. Now, that means that mothers went to bed with empty fridges and empty bank accounts, worried how they'd feed their kids, that seniors worried they'd be evicted from their homes, that young people believed they'd never be able to own a home in the first place. Now, in retrospect, you look back on the Liberal decisions that you advised Justin Trudeau to take. Will you look the camera in the eye and apologize to the many people who suffered as a result of the inflationary policies that you advised Justin Trudeau to implement?
You know, I said earlier, but I'm going to say it again. I know you want to be running against Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau isn't here.
Are you denying you were his economic advisor?
I did not provide any of that advice. I did not provide any of that advice.
On the Liberal Party website. Are you accusing your Liberal Party of lying about your role? Because it says today you can go to the Liberal Party website now, and it says that you were Justin Trudeau's economic advisor.
The way you judge someone, in my view, is how they act, what they do when they have responsibility. Twice I was a central bank governor. And in both cases, if I may, in both cases when I was responsible for inflation was less than 2%. I'll add that when I was here responsible for the Bank of Canada, inflation was less than 2%. Our dollar was at parity. That is the kind of success that I can deliver for this country coming out of this crisis. And what is at stake here?
You were the economic advisor to Justin Trudeau that gave us the worst inflation that we have had in a generation, because the policies that you implemented and those of the MPs that are still in your ministry.
To the
fellow Canadians,
crisis which
the last 10 years has been about the Liberals. The next 10 years should be about you.
And that's time. Mr. Carney, good news is the next question is yours.
Well, I'm going to ask myself a question.
That's a good one.
Actually, I'm going to ask a question which has been troubling me. And it's troubling me because, we are in a very dangerous and divided world.
Who is it to?
I'm going to ask a question of Mr. Poilievre. Why not? We're in a dangerous and divided world. We talked earlier about the challenges in the Middle East, the threats from Iran, threats from Russia, Russia's aggression in Ukraine. We have the threats from China, which I raised. We have the United States, which is fundamentally changing its security relationships, its commercial relationships. We have all this. And in the context of that, everyone on this stage, Mr. Blanchet, Mr. Singh, myself, we have our top secret security clearance. We have our top secret security clearance. I got mine within 3 weeks. It wasn't hard, but I felt it was important that I had it so I could be in a position to be informed about that dangerous world and take decisions at. And Mr. Poilievre, it is now 950 days, if my numbers are right, since you've had the opportunity to get your top secret security clearance, and you've refused. Why?
Well, first of all, I have got my security clearance when I was a minister. I got top secret clearance at the time, so there's no problem getting that. But when the government made this recent offer, they said that if I got the secret security clearance briefings, that I would be gagged under the security law, and I could be prosecuted if I spoke freely about matters of foreign interference. Now, given that Canada has experienced Chinese interference by Beijing, the government of China, in 2 consecutive elections, I needed to do my job to speak freely without fear of prosecution. And that was not something I would be allowed to do. Even Thomas Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, said that when he was the leader of the opposition, he never would have accepted the kind of gag order that your government and Mr. Trudeau's government was attempting to impose on me. And it's good that I'd made that decision, because it has allowed me to speak freely about things like the case where one of your candidates, sir, actually said that he wanted to send a political opponent to China under a bounty threatening his life or imprisonment, and you refused to get rid of him. Now, it might have something to do with the fact that you went to China not long ago to get a $250 million loan for your company. But the reality is you refused to stand up for a Canadian who was being threatened by a foreign government. And I was able to speak freely on that matter because I refused the gag order that the Liberal government attempted to impose on me.
Well, there's a couple of interesting things. I think people at home have seen a robust debate here, and it's been a robust campaign, and it has not stopped Mr. Blanchet or Mr. Singh at times during his campaign by making challenges with respect to these issues. So one can address it. I will observe, as someone with the top secret security clearance, that China is not the only country that is accused of foreign interference.
And gentlemen, that is time.
Thank you for telling us that now.
Now, closing statements are
Really?
still a few minutes down the road, so we have a little bit of time for some quick Q&As for each of you right now. Short questions, 45 seconds, please, on the answers, and we're going to go left to right as I look at you right now. Ms. Poilievre, you get the first question. To the best of my knowledge, you have not offered a hard timeline, as the other parties have, to meet Canada's NATO commitment of 2% spending on defense. When would you hit that target?
My aim will be to 2030. That said, when we renegotiate our trade deal with the U.S., I know it's their priority to see us increase our military budget. One of the things I will say to the Americans is the more free trade, tariff-free free trade we have, the faster we can rebuild our military in Canada and reassert our sovereignty. And we will use that money to have heavy icebreakers in the north, Poseidon aircraft, fighter jets, a new base in the north, double the Arctic Rangers, fill the vacancies in the armed forces, and rebuild the warrior spirit that characterized our military since the birth of our country. We will rebuild our forces, and we will stand behind our veterans.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. Mr. Carney, your question. You have cut both the consumer carbon tax and the capital gains tax increase that you inherited from your predecessor. Is that an admission that the Liberals made life less affordable for Canadians?
I think let me give you the rationale behind both of those changes. First, with respect to the consumer carbon tax, in effect, it become too divisive for Canadians. Canadians received rebates. On the whole, they received more than the tax actually was, but some had represented that it was a tax without a rebate. It became divisive. It didn't serve its purpose. It made a relatively modest contribution to overall climate goals. I got rid of it. First act made Canadians whole. Secondly, but with respect to the capital gains tax, it's come up again. I'll be quick. This is a fundamental issue. We need to build this country. Builders, innovators, entrepreneurs need to be rewarded. That's why I brought it back.
And that's time. Thank you. Mr. Singh, would you change the existing cap on immigration?
I've said that the level of immigration, first of all, we need immigration. It's fundamentally important to our country. And we speak to any small business owner, you speak to people here in Quebec, you speak to farmers. It's fundamentally important. A couple things, though, we know we need to be able to set the amount of folks that we welcome to our country at a level that it meets our needs. So I would ensure that we've got an expert panel that makes that determination based on our economic needs.
More of a need and a
we
must.
also know that we should be very clear that the lack of investment from Liberals and Conservatives resulted in the fact that we have a shortage in housing. That's something that we've got to fix. I should also point out that if you are worried about the cuts being proposed by Liberals and Conservatives, vote for New Democrats. We'll fight back to protect Canadians and make sure that we've got the right immigration levels.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. That's time. Mr. Blanchet, Quebec, I believe, is now the only province with a carbon tax. Do you think that's fair?
Nope.
It's not entirely true. It's not a tax. What Quebec has is a system by which we invite big emission companies, I don't know how to translate that, to reduce their emissions. If they do not, then they have to pay. It goes into a fund which is invested then in reducing emissions. Our partner is California, which makes this a huge deal about reducing emissions. This is what we do. This is to be compared to what Europe does. And by the way, Europe would impose tariffs on Canadian oil if it ever got there. We're quite proud of that. And we have to be responsible because this is much less expensive than doing nothing to fight climate change.
That's time. We're going to do another set of quick hits here, left to right again, and 30 seconds this time. Monsieur Poilievre, you've previously promised to defund the CBC as one of your very first acts as Prime Minister. Is that still the plan?
Yes, CBC will continue to operate as a self-funded, Canadian-owned and controlled non-for-profit that raises money like other media organizations through sponsorships, subscriptions, advertising, licensing fees, and countless other things that will ensure Canadians who still want to listen and view its content will be able to do so. And at the same time, we'll allow freedom of the press so that everybody has their voice heard and they can make their own decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. The next question to you, 30 seconds. Would you remove some of Canada's legal tax avoidance loopholes that companies that you have worked for have used?
I think that what we need to do is undertake a comprehensive review of our corporate tax system and do that on the basis of the right principles. We've got to have fairness, transparency, sustainability, and competitiveness. So we need a tax system, a corporate tax system, including being part of a international minimum corporate tax through the OECD.
And that is time. Mr. Singh, the question for you is, if you hold the balance of power after this election is over, what would your price be to support another party?
We've laid out our priorities. We want to make sure we bring down the cost of groceries, build homes that people can afford. I can also tell you that we would defend CBC, unlike Mr. Poilievre, who wants to cut it, and we would close tax loopholes and offshore tax havens, even though Mr. Carney didn't respond to that. And selling stocks and shares to make profits and then having less taxes on that is not hard work. And so those aren't the job creators. The people who are job creators are the hardworking men and women that contribute to our economy.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Monsieur Blanchet, kind of the same question. If you hold the balance of power in the next minority parliament, if it is that, what would be the price of your support?
Respect for Quebec. That's quite easy. I don't want to go against what Canada wants to do for itself, but I don't want Canada to impose an economic vision or a multiculturalist vision on Quebec, which is different in terms of language and values and secularity and equality between people. So I want to be a partner, and if Quebec is respected, Canada has nothing to fear from the Bloc because we vote for what is good for Quebec. It only has to be good for Quebec.
Thank you, Monsieur Blanchet. Now, we have one last question for each of you. We'll go right to left this time as I look at you. Bit of an offbeat question. Monsieur Blanchet, what is your biggest regret during this campaign?
That's a very good question. I'm not very fond of regrets, I would say, but we should have started sooner to see that we had to create the environment for a deal in which Quebec and Canada would be, one bigger than the other, but partners to be stronger in front of Mr. Trump and showing that maybe nobody here is the partner to let go alone without being surveyed or controlled or supervised by a Quebec voice.
Thank you, Mr. Blanchet. Same question, Mr. Singh. Your biggest regret of this campaign?
Not being able to meet as many people as I would love to have. It's a short campaign, and so I can't get to as many communities that I wanted to. I think one of the honors of my job is to be able to meet people and to hear their stories, and then to take their stories and concerns and bring them to Ottawa and to fight for those people. And so I want you to know, even though I haven't made it to your community, I'm going to fight like hell to make sure that you're represented, that we never let any
you got so
government
much
cut our
stock right
healthcare,
now.
that we defend the values that we care so deeply about. We make my life more affordable. That's my commitment to you. Even if I didn't get to see you, that's my commitment.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Mr. Carney, same question. Biggest regret of the campaign?
I'm to be honest, it's the same answer. This is an astonishing country. It is an amazing country, and
you're late.
The opportunity and the responsibility that comes with it, of being with Canadians, hearing their stories, their challenges, drawing strength and ideas from them,
Mr. Carney,
and working to be part of the solution is the greatest honor of my life. But the regret is that it is also a big country, and it is a short period of time.
Mr. Poilievre, last word to you.
I actually agree with these two gentlemen. I had a rule that at all my rallies, even when they're really big, I would stand in front of a flag and greet every single person and hear their stories and learn their struggles. And that was always touching to me, that they would put their faith in me or in any of us.
Yeah.
But we've been in such a rush because we have to get off to the next event, so we haven't been able to stop and do that. And I want you to know out there, I haven't forgot about you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. It is time now for closing statements, and prior to the debate, you drew lots as to which order we would go in, and Mr. Singh, you get the first word on a closing statement.
Certainly, thank you. Because you voted for New Democrats, we were able to build this country that we love. Universal health care and pensions, because you voted for us. Because you voted for New Democrats, we were able to fight to bring in dental care, pharmacare, and childcare. Because you voted for us, because you supported us. You have the power with your vote to send more New Democrats to Ottawa to continue that fight, to make sure that no government cuts the things that we hold dear, like our health care, to ensure that we can do everything possible to make life more affordable by making it more affordable to buy your groceries and to get a home. I'm asking for your support in this election so that I can continue to fight to defend the things that make Canada, Canada, things that we hold dear, the things that make us proud to be Canadian.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Mr. Carney.
We are facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. Donald Trump is trying to fundamentally change the world economy, the trading system. But really what he's trying to do to Canada, he's trying to break us so the U.S. can own us. They want our land, they want our resources, they want our water, they want our country. And we're all stand against Donald Trump. All right. The year strong with the strongest economy. We will build Canada strong. I'm asking for your support, the honor of doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Monsieur Blanchet.
For 260 years and a little bit more, les Français, devenus des Canadiens, devenus des Canadiens français, devenus des Québécois, you have tried to have them become Canadians like all Canadians. But to no avail, we are different. So let's be economic partners. Let's have a voice chosen by and for Quebecers, an ally for Canadians as equals in front of Mr. Trump.
Monsieur Poiliev.
Only in Canada could someone start where I began and get to this stage. I was born to a single mother and adopted by school teachers who raised me to believe in the incredible Canadian promise that anyone who worked hard could do anything. That promise feels broken today. Many of you worried about paying your bills, feeding your families, or ever even owning a home. You're worried your kids are in danger. But I'm here to say it doesn't have to be this way. With change, we can restore the Canadian promise so that hard work gets you a beautiful house on a safe street under a proud flag. We can do it with hope for a change.
Gentlemen, thank you for a very spirited debate tonight. 2 quick points before we go. Number one of you celebrated your 60th birthday yesterday on this stage. Yves-François Blanchet, bon anniversaire.
Bon anniversaire. Merci beaucoup.
Second, you'll note we didn't change the time of this Atlantic Division, and therefore we didn't need to move the debate to accommodate a hockey game. I'm getting back at my colleague who was in this position last night, and okay, go Habs go, that's fine. With that, we're done. Thank you, leaders, for being here tonight. We are just 11 days from Election Day, April 28th, but there are many ways that you can cast your ballot starting tomorrow at advanced polls. If you intend to vote by mail, that deadline is April 22nd. Make sure to check your voter details or contact Elections Canada. This is with us tonight. I'm Steve Paikin. Good night from Montreal.
Oh, but thank you. Enjoy that.
Bon anniversaire.
Let's see if anybody's going to take some questions there. And a little bit. Give it back.
To become prime minister has just come to a conclusion. Objectively, I think you could say it was far feistier than what took place in French on the stage last night. I'm live in Montreal for analysis. Before we get to what did happen following the debate, and something that we kind of call scrums, those scrums have been canceled, we are told, or the parties were told, because of security reasons. Details around what security concerns there are, my colleague
idea, and maybe they can see it behind you right now, but there is yellow caution tape around this sort of area at Maison Radio Canada where we are all of these networks are right now. So security has definitely been stepped up. There was one point when I was trying to cross the tape and somebody asked me for my badge. And of course, it's a badge that we all have to try and make sure that we're identified. And here, so certainly there tell you that before we bring in for the and as we understand it, some of those so-called journalists that represent the right wing and the far right have said they were trying to essentially grandstand, being told that the way that the questions would be distributed on those grounds would be different. You had that conversation earlier today with Executive Director of the Leaders Debate Commission. He had said that they would be doing things differently, and that obviously got back to them, and they said that they were starting to say that this was undemocratic and that they're simply there to
Mike,
ask
I'm so sorry.
questions.
I'm going to have to interrupt you. Mike,
now.
I'm going to have to interrupt you. My apologies. I'm going to swing over to the Executive Director of the Debate Commission who made this decision, Michel Cormier. He's taking questions live. Let's take a listen to him.
Proper environment for this activity. Alors, comme je viens de dire, la commission a décidé qu'il n'y aurait pas de point de presse des chefs ce soir parce qu'on ne sent pas qu'on est capable d'assurer un
Wow, that's interesting. Let me see if the rebels
We can't
have
provide
something.
a proper environment for this. The press room.
The press room open till 11, so you can finish filing. And I invite you to call the campaigns if you want any questions.
We heard Mark Carney backed out. Is that true?
I thought that he was incredibly disciplined in the way that he remained unruffled by Singh, who was clearly trying to.
I heard Mark
find
Carney backing out, guys.
Interrupting him constantly, but
Let's
kind of made
see.
it himself rather than actually
In fact,
changing the dynamic of
Yes.
I thought Carney really took it on the chin a couple times.
Right back.
The most
I don't know,
important
you're a
guy
government
as an adversary.
every single one of you.
No,
He's
it's-
not a
no,
government
we're not government journalists.
If you get the government subsidy, you're a government journalist. I'm not a government. Who do you work for, sir? Canadian Press gets massive grants from the government.
Oh my God. It's an admission and funding.
You're literally wearing the front because I follow the liberals. You know how it works.
Oh,
May I ask you,
it's not a game. What do you think about the third-party advertisers that are supporting this?
Only your own media can ask you questions.
All right. Why don't you answer his question? What was his question? I didn't hear the question. I'm flattered to be here. Let me just say this. I think that journalism needs to be democratized. And I think it's sort of creepy that the enemies of Rebel News in the press gallery stop us from asking questions of politicians 99% of the time. Once every 4 years, we're allowed to put a couple of questions to these high priests of politics. And there's a total freak out in the press gallery. Like, seriously, it's like leap year. 15 minutes every 4-year season, we're allowed.
Oh. Can you move your scrum now? We want to watch this guy. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
I love that Ezra called them high priest apologists. How absolutely fitting. And so this little scrum happened after Hill Times journalist Stu Benson lost his composure in the media center during the leaders' debate. And then Ezra held a discussion outside of the room in response to that. And then approximately an hour later, word spread that the post-debate press scrum had been canceled. So this is a longer clip, and I haven't seen it yet myself. So let's just play it, and maybe we'll play it out in full.
Yeah, after you guys threatened to sue, that's why they got the 4 questions, because the commission. You're making that up. You're lying again. When did the CDC get 4 questions? Yesterday. Yes, after.
So this is what happened in the press room.
Because you threatened to sue. You're lying again. I'm not. Because you're lying. Don't you have a third-party advertising truck? You don't take care of it. How much did you spend on third-party advertising this election? Between Rebel News and Core Canada, companies you own both of, how much money have you spent to influence this election? I'm assuming in favor of conservatives. How much have you spent? Like, you're a journalist, you must be honest. So, Rebel News Limited, you
Canada's journalism.
set up and registered under Elections Canada.
Legacy
Anyone
media.
else? You go to Elections Canada right now.
And the Rebel News.
Search
Beautiful
Rebel
girls.
News for Canada, and you will see clear as day Ethel Van as the owner of both of those companies. He has third-party advertising trucks driving around this venue right now.
That's somebody's mad.
It's
We didn't
owned
get
by
the
Rebel.
questions
It's owned by you.
yesterday.
Oh, sorry. The truck is
That's
for
how kids
Canada,
behave.
which is owned
It's
by
not a
you,
grown
which is
man.
separate from Rebel News, which is also owned by you.
Just mad.
One by one. Control your emotions. So, Ed, you're out of control.
So I wash.
Speaking quietly doesn't make your things any less. You're
completely out of control emotionally. Your facts are completely wrong.
All right.
What's your name?
Calm down, ma'am.
You're suddenly shy.
No, I'm Googling.
You're Googling your name? Tell us who you are, tough guy.
Stuart Benson, Hill Times.
Student Benson, well, you're disgraced to the Hill Times.
Oh boy.
You're a disgrace to journalism, buddy. Shut up. I can do the job of one of me. Can do the same job. You really need 5 reporters to do. So, am I the disgrace, or is it all of the people you needed to do the job I do by myself?
Oh wow.
Oh.
Looks like he's the one who sabotaged the press from asking their question. That looks like that to me.
T5J OK4. I wonder where that was. T5J OK4. I wonder what that post was.
Well, you certainly got a tiger by the
Let's go check out Core Canada. I wonder who they are.
He sounds exactly like you think he was.
Like a raving lunatic.
No, you don't understand.
I've heard
You
of
don't understand what you're looking at.
So shrill.
Yes, really exceptional work you're doing.
Oh, I've heard ranting drug addicts on the
You're
street
out of control emotionally.
better behaved than this guy.
Tantrum boy. I'll call you tantrum boy.
That is unhinged.
Holy Hannah. I've never seen anything like that, to be completely honest. Like in a professional setting, never.
Welcome
it's
to
not
Canada.
It's entirely unprofessional.
It can get hectic.
Look at how absolutely unhinged
This is a crucial,
the laptop class becomes
crucial event.
when they aren't given their silver platter.
That was wild to watch. That happened while we were watching the debate. Did it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the behind the scenes. Thank goodness that we took the steps that we took to send a team of rebels, just like everyone else.
No question.
Just to even the playing field, because otherwise, those are the kind of lunatics that dominate the media space.
So, not to put too fine a point on it, but like dealing with the public education system in Canada is exactly like dealing with that room. It is the exact same energy. It's like either you abide by the groupthink, okay? Either you are a participant in the group project, or you are an absolute outsider who should not be tolerated and has to be removed at the earliest convenience. This of the authorities. That was wild
Sorry, guys.
to watch. But you know what? Thank God we sent 5 people. Like, thank God we had our whole team there to at least offer a tiny bit of backup. I mean, that was a man that looked like he could have got violent at any point. And while he's, directing the room to the website and telling them what to go look for, everybody go Google. Don't you think that that's a real good sort of snapshot
partway through
of the
Pierre actually
corrupt
said
Canadian press
a
right
few
now?
times very specifically when he was
Everybody
talking about
go to the
his
website
agenda
and
and what
search
he wanted
these
to
keywords.
encourage in people. And you're right, Mark Carney, even the closing statements were kind of interesting because in a way, the conservative narrative has had to be about the liberal lost decade, which is a negative, theme with conservative principles and ideas being a solution. And the liberals can't run on their record, and so their goal is to kind of create a negative storyline about Canada's future vis-a-vis Trump, and so it's a Trump crisis. But I think what you see with Mark Carney is the classic sort of left perspective that a crisis is too good a thing to waste, and what they mean by waste is it's an opportunity to impose more state control, more government regulation, higher taxes, more borrowing, more getting out of, more getting out of whatever the crisis is by expanding the government, expanding the debt burden that'll be on the next generation. And it's not a very, it's a story that works if you buy the crisis.
Even before
you
this
don't
Trump
buy the
stuff
crisis,
started,
not a story that works
there
very
has
well.
been
I actually
a
think the
back and
problem for Mark
forth,
Carney,
and I think a competition around the affordability issue between primarily the Conservatives and the NDP. And so I think both Singh and Poilievre
for tonight.
Want to bring the conversation back around.
That is CPAC.
It is an important part of the ritual of elections and democracy. It is a debate of the RCMP.
And that is where we are.
Okay, let's go.
We remain safe and that the media get out safely. They were not altercations between journalists inside the media room, and there was no altercation between journalists that happened on David's set. These were right-wing people that publish their own agenda and websites who confronted journalists inside the media center, who confronted David on his set, who directly and personally confronted me inside the media center. These are people that the commission decided to accredit, and that is where we are now. The situation deteriorated quickly in terms of how those people were behaving inside a professional media center where you were supposed to be doing your job, and that has left us with no scrums and a strange security situation on a night where we should be focused on the things that you want to ask us about. It certainly didn't look like this
Just
last
one
night.
point on that. We are inside a secure perimeter. You have to go through screening processes that involve the RCMP. This set we were on, they came in with bomb-sniffing dogs, searched our bags to make sure everything was safe. That's to make sure the leaders are safe and everybody in here is safe. And for whatever reason, the way this evolved throughout the day and
Someone didn't
yesterday,
behave right.
the Montreal police are here putting up caution tape, escorting people out. And the leaders of Canada's 4 parties who were able to participate in this debate, because they, what was the phrase? Didn't feel they could provide or guarantee a proper environment. They're not going to take questions from journalists. And look, I know not everybody thinks it's all about us, but it is an important part of the ritual of elections and democracies and accountability. And it is part of the stress test that these leaders go through as they seek to lead this country, and spend your tax revenue and make laws, and some serious things being discussed here tonight about criminal justice and using the notwithstanding clause. These are all things that require a serious and mature debate, not financially motivated stunts. And this is where we've ended up in this election. With everything going on with Donald Trump and everything going on in this economy and everything going on in the world, this is where the national Canadian election debate has ended up. And it's just exhausting. And it is the end product of multiple years of rage farming for narrow political gain. and financial benefit for a very small group of people who blew this up today.
And Canadians, as a result, don't get one more rare opportunity to hear the leaders answer questions.
It sounds like, and to Karina's point, it sounds like the NDP there is going to hold some sort of scrum tonight, probably around 9:45
at his hotel.
Eastern, at his hotel. Yep. Others may choose to do the same.
Do not say which hotel, because it'll create a security incident.
But it does, the scrums are intended to follow up on some of the things in the debates, right? To ask more pointed questions about things that maybe didn't get full answers. And so unfortunately that is not going to happen tonight, but I understand that security decisions had to be made.
Well, this is where we can ask the questions.
That's right.
This is where we can try to deconstruct more of what happened. Housing was brought up a lot. Housing was a big deal. What did you hear that is interesting or different to you?
I think one of the things that Mr. Carney pretty effectively pointed out is, both Pierre Poilievre and Mr. Carney have promises around removing the GST for homes to varying degrees. But one of the things that Mr. Carney said was, I am also interested in creating rental properties, affordable housing. I want to do things in a different way. I think Pierre Poilievre's approach to government, I know, is that there be less government, that the market can sort of sort things out. And so the policy he's designed is intended to do that, to hope that developers will come in, to hope that buyers will find homes, because there will just naturally be more if there's more incentive to build. Mr. Carney's is a little bit of both of those things, I would say. And if you're thinking about, okay, well, how is my kid going to afford a house in 5 or 10 years? You also need to think about whether there'll be a house to own. Right. And so the supply issue for the Liberal Party seems to be as important as the trying to get things going.
Yeah, it's interesting in this somehow housing has become a federal issue over the last number of years, when, quite frankly, mayors, city councilors, and premiers have really gotten off the hook for the role that they have played in this, either by not freeing up land, not changing zoning policy, or in their unwillingness to raise property taxes on existing homeowners. They jack up development fees and bury all of those costs into the mortgages of new home buyers, and inevitably just making the starting point of a house before it's even built so high it has made it inaccessible to people. So it's going to take the federal government, whoever wins this election, to use the power of its treasury and the moral suasion that you can bring from the bully pulpit of the Prime Minister's office to get movement on this. There are ideas there, like the housing accelerator and the tax incentives that is going to require, that is going to unlock things. All of the parties have a blend of ideas that can work here. One of the challenges working against this, though, comes back to the skilled labor challenge. And if you also look at the consensus on limiting immigration and capping it at lower levels than we've seen the last couple of years, a lot of which has been very problematic because of just student visas and low wage workers being brought in. There's going to be a collision there that may require some tweaking of all of these things, because you have to build it at a scale and at a speed we just don't do in this country. And you have to do it with a workforce that just does not exist in this country right now. And you have to do it in a time frame that may go beyond what is tenable in a typical political cycle. So however, whatever force multiplier you can bring to it after this election
in the comment section
is
of
going
our
to
new
also
website.
be challenged by
You can
what
have your
focus
say
you can bring to it after this election, once
You'll
the
be
trade
able to take pride in
renegotiations and
supporting
the
real,
entire
honest
recalibration of the continental
journalism. And you'll help our
relationship
talented
on
team continue
economy,
to do
on
the work
security,
to
on
push
defense, and on
back.
integration,
Maybe
and
we're gonna have to
activities
call it a
Europe and
night.
Asia
We
and all
really
these
can
other
use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you. And enjoy Rebel News Plus.
All right, I think we have Sheila from the inside to join us and tell us what the heck is going on in the background of these debates. Hey, Sheila, what is happening?
Okay, let us know. Okay, we're here.
I've never seen such a bunch of unhinged buffoonery in my entire life as I've just seen unfold in this place. I don't know if you guys saw the footage of that unhinged Hill Times reporter in his Hillary Clinton pantsuit yelling at Ezra Levant, completely unprovoked. Ezra was telling him, stay calm, calm down. And, you know, CBC complaining that we asked questions. And so then they were reporting that we had our accreditation revoked. We didn't. You know who didn't have his accreditation revoked? The Hill Times weirdo over there. It's so tense in here that I'm frankly worried about my safety. And I'll tell you why. Because Alexa, this place, by the way, exploded. I'll get to what happened outside in a second. This place exploded when it was announced that the scrums would be canceled. And everybody, unhinged, blamed us, even though we've been the victims of their unhinged behavior this whole time. We've conducted ourselves with nothing but professionalism, and the comportment of the individuals here has been less than desirable, I would say. And I knew, because we sort of had confirmation from the inside before, we knew, and I sent a message to everybody saying, be ready with your cameras. This place is going to pop off and they are going to blame us. And that's instantly what happened. Some left-wing journalists, subsidized journalists from Ricochet start screaming at Ezra. People shoving Lincoln, like shoving him. Like, shush. It wasn't like a bump, like physically smacking into him. Just like absolute mayhem. The police should have intervened. I don't know why they didn't. I got fed up. I might have raised my voice a little bit. I wasn't yelling, but I said, you know, we have been heckled, berated, derided, subject to abuse. We had paper thrown at us the entire time that we've been here. They're running nonstop stories on us, treating us like pariahs, and they're acting like the victims in here. It is the most astounding, bizarre thing. What happened to Ezra earlier? It's 4 minutes of video that happened on camera. So you could see the behavior of the other journalists, and they're still blaming him for the scrum being canceled. The scrum was canceled because we asked questions these people don't have the bravery to ask. That's what happened.
Yes.
And they're treating us like absolute pariahs. Now, Guillaume's behind the camera. Alexa Lincoln and Alexa Lincoln David, they went outside. And Lincoln calls me and tells me that he's been assaulted. The team has been assaulted out there. Again, this place is wriggling with the journalists. No one will have footage, I'm sure. There's cops everywhere. Why are my guys getting manhandled out there? They're not allowed back in. All their stuff is in here. We're separated from each other. It's absolute chaos. And the journalists in here are the true victims. We've been subject to their bad behavior the whole time, and they're blaming us because the Debates Commission doesn't have the bravery to uphold journalistic freedom when differing opinions are in the room.
Well, and that's what I think it all boils down to, is that we had a team there prepared, ready, acting professional, looking the professional, when some of the counterparts were looking, like street people adjacent. And then the entire legacy media and laptop class had a complete meltdown over the fact that we were there asking some questions. It is absolute insanity that this is the state of the media landscape here in Canada.
And again, we at Rebel News are allowed 15 minutes every 4 years to do this, because the press gallery, the parliamentary press gallery, keeps us out. So they couldn't even tolerate us. They couldn't even keep their good manners for 15 minutes out of 4 years. Canada, this is a changing moment in our country. You are seeing the way they behave towards us. You are seeing the hostility and the aggression that they're showing towards us. This is media that's funded by the government, and the government does nothing to stop them. Nothing. As a matter of fact, they enable them. The government enables this kind of behavior.
Look at Jagmeet Singh.
They get preferential treatment because of how they treat us. That's what's happening.
Pretty bad.
So this is a room of, I don't know, 100, 150 journalists. Everything they've reported on us was absolutely wrong, save for the independent media. Things that were caught on video, they reported inaccurately, knowing that we would publish the video that would debunk them. They just didn't care. They just would rather lie than allow the public to believe their lying eyes. I've never seen anything like it. Like I said, it was absolute buffoonery here.
So what's next? What's happening now? Everybody's kind of separated.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Where are you right now? Like, where are you? Describe where you are.
So the media snake pit is right in front of me, and I'm standing in front of the place where the leaders would come out. I don't know why I don't know why I have the blur on my thing. It's too late to fix it, but this would be where their microphone would be for them to take questions from the journalists. And it's so funny because they're saying, well, you sued to get there and you made them accredit 5 journalists. Yeah, but none of you got out of your chairs, you guys, and came up into the line. Like, what was the secret to our success? Politely walking into the line like that.
Trade secrets.
Like,
there they are.
That's some free advice, you guys, from your 4 years of day school. Get out of the line and wait and have a question to ask. That's literally all we did. We didn't fuss. We didn't fight. There's not a single person in here who could rightfully say that we were aggressive. Now they may lie and say that we were, but we were we were on the receiving end of some pretty intense bullying all week long, and we conducted ourselves. I mean, Drea led by example with dignity and resolve.
100%. Just the picture of decorum, and the most important question to Jagmeet Singh, and we all saw how he treated her. We all saw how he treated her. Yeah. It was the defining moment of yesterday's debate, and it trickled over till today because they couldn't risk another shaming like they had to take yesterday for their poor behavior.
You know, I said I was just raising my voice to a group of journalists, and I said, you guys all saw how we were treated this whole time. You saw that they were yelling at us, heckling us, jeering at us, throwing stuff. You saw, and you didn't report any of it. You just pretended like it didn't happen. And there's Judy Trent chuckling to herself. She knew. They all knew.
Oh my God.
And then when the thing gets canceled, they blame us because they can't behave themselves.
We have this crazy footage from outside of the event where...
Seen it yet?
Let's watch it together. Let's live react to what just happened outside of the commission. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's watch this.
Okay.
Oh, Terry Gillan! Hey! Terry Gillan!
What are you gonna? Bro, you guys are out. You touched me with that. I did not touch you, sir. You're a liar. You're a goddamn liar.
You're a liar.
Oh yeah, nice try, guys. You just hit me. Look what you're doing. Police.
Go back to the first one. Go back to that first one. How long is this?
Who was that?
Terry
Guillaume.
Terry Gillan. Terry Gillan.
What are you gonna? Bro, you guys are out. You touched me with that. I did not touch you, sir. You're a liar. You're a goddamn liar.
You're a liar.
Oh, yeah, nice try, guys. You just hit me. Look what you're doing. Police.
No, the police is backed by the liberal.
I hadn't seen it yet. All I had seen was Lincoln telling me that they had been assaulted and that they weren't allowed to come back, and to make sure that I grabbed their stuff. I didn't know the extent of it because I was just quickly throwing in my earbuds and coming to talk to you. I hadn't seen that. That's a member of the Prime Minister's press team.
What?
Terry Guillaume is the senior lead media advance, the office of the Prime Minister of Canada.
Assaulting our guy.
Who has repeatedly acted so brazenly and physical with Rebel News journalists. He has a long history of this behavior.
Yep.
Oh,
and you can
my God.
Thugs.
Again, they're thugs.
Thugs. Our guys are just out there doing their jobs. And these guys in this room, they were the victims tonight, apparently, of our presence. And this is how we have to work. We're getting yelled at. The Hill Times guy losing his marbles on Ezra across the room. Terry Guillaume assaulting our people outside. We're calling for the police to help. The police aren't coming. That guy is unhinged. I hadn't seen that before.
He needs to be charged. Number one, he needs to be charged. But then again, we're relying on the same police that arrested Natasha Graham earlier this week. So what are our, like, what are we thinking is going to happen here? Like, Canada is not a safe place for independent journalism. It is not a safe place. Obviously, look, I cannot believe that that's part of the Prime Minister's press team. Like, this is the stuff of like communist nations, guys. This is the behavior of communist nations that we're seeing unfold here. There is no Canadian that is seeing this that should not be very, very concerned. Why?
They canceled a debate scrum rather than allow us to ask questions. At first, we heard that they would be limiting us to just one question and no follow-up. We thought, okay, fine, whatever. We'll ask one really great question. And then we got word halfway through from people on the inside who said, actually, they're canceling it. So, and then we can't even get out of the building without being assaulted. And these journalists in here are playing the victim. It's appalling. It's revolting. I hope they can hear me.
Holy
Is it possible to show what's behind Guillaume there? Can you scan the room and show us?
Yeah.
Sure. Guillaume,
oh, I guess the blur's on though.
Oh, shoot. Hang on. Can I change that alive? I don't think I can. Sorry. When Ezra's right beside me, that's okay. The least of what happened to us today. Ezra's right beside me. So why don't we hang up, you guys, and then Ezra can pop on and he can talk about what he knows, because he knows more than what I know, because things are developing even while I'm on with you guys.
Absolutely crazy.
Okay. And then he can turn the off, or you know what? I'll send the team what the room looks like while Ezra's talking. You guys can show that live.
Thanks, Sheila. Okay, stay safe out there and keep us posted.
Take care, my girl. Yep.
My goodness, what a crazy state of affairs. While we get it sorted out, what exactly is happening there? I'm just going to run through some of these super chats because we have so much to catch up on, and the chats have been going crazy. So let's just go back. I'm not even sure where I left off here. Sorry, just bear with me here. We have so many super chats. This is great.
Thank you guys.
Thank you
guys.
To everyone at home.
Like if ever you wonder the importance of Rebel News and independent media, it is the most important thing in Canada right now. And we thank you so much for supporting us.
I'm here.
Every little bit counts. We get no government funding. Like, thank you for being here with us.
Well, we try to connect with Ezra and or get a panorama of the room. I think I might have read this, but I'm not totally sure. So let me just go back. It's Steven797 gives $10. Thank you very much. Says, keep up the great work. Love you all. Then we have Ian the Man 26 gives $20. Thank you so much, Ian. Our beautiful country has suffered enough under the Liberals for the last 10 years. That is where I left off. Let's stop the divisiveness and let's unite as a strong nation together. And then Transpo gives $20. This election is the most important decision affecting the future of our nation. Freedom versus socialism is in the court. Censorship has threatened our democracy. Thank you. And I mean, how much does that super chat there resonate with what happened and what we've seen happening on the ground at this commission right now? No wonder the regime wants to have us censored. Look at the behavior that ensues. The laptop is given their silver.
I'm here. Just a little low of my connection, but I'm here.
Can't stand the heat. Ezra, I see that we have him on the line now.
Ezra,
let's find out. From your perspective, we just heard from Sheila a little bit of what had happened. What is going on behind the scenes there that none of us at home can see?
Oh, you know, it's one of the strangest days of my life, I gotta tell you. Yesterday was so exciting. Rebel News had 4
out of 17 questions. I was the only rebel who didn't get a question, but there were wonderful questions by Drea, Sheila, David, and Alexa, en français, which I really liked. That was the same number of questions that was asked by CBC, their French and English divisions. And it was pretty cool that there's a room of over 100 journalists, but had 4 questions. Just in the line. But unfortunately, what I call the regime media, the mainstream media, the legacy media, absolutely freaked out on the Debates Commission. The chair of the Debates Commissioner, the commissioner, it's called, Michel Cormier, for some reason, he did a media tour. He was on CBC. He was on.
Yes.
He did so many interviews, and in every single one, he was basically beaten like a dog by people who said, "How dare you allow those evil rebels?" And there are other citizen journalists here too. Our alumnus, Kian.
So
Betsy,
unfair.
our friend Juno, Eastern Standard. There's really good people here. It's just the because we've been around 10 years. But the Michel Cormier, the commissioner, was so roughed up by the cool kids. Or you allow those peasants in here? How dare you allow those? By the way, questions were really good. Their work speaks for themselves. So all day he was roughed up, and he made a promise. Well, I won't let that happen. But on that, the debate commission is governed. He agreed to us in writing that they would allow 5 of our people to ask questions, just like other organizations do. So how do you square that circle? On the one hand, all the cool kids, all the mean girls, all the mainstream media were saying you can't let us get any more questions. You've got to think. On the other hand, there's the law. Cases 1921 saying. So insanely, absolutely great. At the last moment, stood exactly where I'm standing now and said, "We're calling it off." And I think he said security reasons, and people said, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" And he ran away with it. Obviously, the issue. This is the most locked down police place in Canada right now. There are 100 cops here. There's sniffer dogs. There's SWAT teams. If there really were a security threat, they would have pulled the politicians away. It was their way of cutting the Gordian knot, of stopping Rebel News from asking the questions without breaking the law. But of course, they let down the public. The purpose of the debate is to have a debate and to have journalists scrub the politicians to hold them accountable. Just because I'm out, but because he failed in his essential mandate, the Canadians the debate. I guess they saw the debate was quite interesting. Thought wouldn't allow any rather than the down. I went from Rebel News. Very interesting. People shrieking and shaking. And I'll just give you an example. There's some guy from some outlet called Ricochet, and I don't really know that much about it. But they were saying, you've got 13 people here, and you're controlling Kian Bexley, and you're like, what? I like, for those who don't know, Kian Bexley's an alumnus of our company. He works for the Counter Signal. And I like the guy. Of course, I chatted with him. He's a friend. But my point is, let's say there's like, it's just crazy. And you know what? A lot of these left-wing ideas.
The mentality is bad.
He was screaming. They were shaking. I was saying, control yourself emotionally. Some of these guys are cuckoo. And it was demonic. And when the worst moment was actually the best moment. It was yesterday when Drea Humphrey asked the question about the anti-Christian crowing of arson and vandalism against churches. And Drea asked that question so beautifully, and Jagmeet Singh disrespected her, didn't answer the questions. And Drea asked it again, and it was wonderful. The hissing and the heckling. I don't know if it was picked up on the microphones.
No.
It was shocking. And I said to Drea, and it was. I think the people through the north news and leaders, a lot of this stuff in the basement. Today I sat next to the photographer from the Montreal Gazette. He lovely, he was very friendly. Those wackadoodles obviously are very persuasive because they literally convinced Michelle Cormier to hold up. But you know what? That's on them. And
yes,
there was a moment where I was asked to leave the room, and I was told that he wanted to deport me, and I told them that was BS, and they agreed. So they let me back in after about 10 minutes or whatever. And the CBC were so sure I was going to be kicked out, they announced on TV that I had my credentials revoked. They were insane. The CBC made a complaint to the Debates Commission about me, asked them to deport me. I went, I said, what's all this about? And they told me some story. And I said, that is crazy. And they said, all right. And I went back in, and the CBC, that bald guy, I forget his name, David Cochran, I think. I don't want to get that wrong. I think it's David Cochran. He was so certain that he had managed to get me kicked out that he announced it on TV. Like crazy. So anyway, when I came in, people didn't know what had happened. So I had a little scrum, and I said, look, citizen journalists are here to stay. And you don't have to like it, but it's just how it is. And anyone with a cell phone can be a journalist. I'm not saying you're going to be a great journalist. Some are great, some are not great. But this snobbery, this guild, this protected elite, that's just not real. The most popular podcaster in the English language is Joe Rogan.
Yes.
Because he's so bloody good. And I don't think he went to journalism school. And by the way, the CBC should know that. Peter Mansbridge, I don't even think he got his high school diploma. It doesn't mean the guy's a good question asker. And there's a snobbery here. I feel like I'm in the last vestiges of the regime media. And I got to tell you guys have joined our Rebel News project in recent years. When I was there day one, obviously. And when we started Rebel News 10 years ago, I'll confess to you, I had a bit of an inferiority complex. I thought, I'm amateur, I'm not real, this is a toy, the internet's not serious. I just felt like the other guys knew better, were more serious than me. I don't feel, first of all, we actually are bigger than them. I stopped counting our viewership when we hit 2 billion. So I don't feel like we're not big enough. I know I'm as smart as the other guys. I know our journalists are as ethical. So I no longer have this built-in inferiority complex. And by the way, I shouldn't. Think of your favorite journalists around the world. Many of them are internet-based sort of
judges,
citizen journalists. So I think that's what's going on here. We were in the same... They keep us on like a kind of Halley's Comet.
Ministers and MPs.
And they can't stand it. They can't stand it. And I'm not even saying one day. For 15 minutes, counted. And the total talk time we had yesterday was 10 and a half minutes, including answers. So we had 5 minutes of time. That was too much for these people. To let the peasants in for even
media
broke them.
Well, Ezra, you made an interesting comment too about how they were becoming unhinged, saying, "Oh, you control Cian Bexty," and some of these allegations and these claims. I mean, they say that we peddle myths and disinformation, fringe and conspiratorial. This sounds very conspiratorial.
Oh, it just I've never seen it. And here's the thing: no one. It was about politicians debating. It wasn't about the intrigue. Yeah. I mean, people no news. How dare Cian Bexty? Like, good Lord, it's not just about the craft.
How dare.
That's what journalism. craft. Yeah, you know what? You're not. I don't know. There's some wonderful people here. I won't lie. And there's a lot of normal people who just came here to do their job. But there are some seriously crazy people. There's some Antifa-style journalists, and I think that's really what happened. And a lot of them have been radicalized. Anyways, that's my report, and I think it was an enormous victory for Rebel News. It's a disaster for Canada
without question.
that this thing was canceled. But Rebel News came and did what we would do. Just
Ezra, if we can get just comments, what your
the Bloc Québécois leader, I sort of like him, but what's he doing in an English debate? I mean, I suppose there's some Anglos in Quebec, but it felt a little bit out of place. Jagmeet Singh was just interrupting Pierre Poilievre at every opportunity, just trying to do some damage. It's clear he knows that he doesn't have much of a political future. I think Pierre Poilievre was actually pretty good. He was in his, he felt pretty strong. But Mark Carney is, I mean, he had some stumbles. You can tell he's been out of Canada. He didn't know the difference between the Keystone XL pipeline and the Trans pipeline in Canada. He's formidable. I think it's a close race. I think it's closer now than it was a week ago when the Liberals were in the lead. I'm glad I'm out here, and I don't think I learned as much about the candidates as I learned about the media party. The media party is worse than you know. Media party, they sure it's true, but I think they actually hate me in a way because we serve you, like the undesirables, the deplorables, the whatever they're calling
Canada.
People who aren't with the program. That's
like the
why.
money, though.
I mean, here's the thing. Let me close on this. Why didn't this place freak out yesterday when the CBC had 4 questions? Why did they freak out when we did? What's the difference? If we had asked the narrative, official narrative questions, they wouldn't have minded. They would have cheered us. It was purely a content-based discussion.
Yeah. If you would have asked about the text, there would not have been the outrage. Your energy today, your energy today, Ezra, couldn't be more different than your energy of last night. I mean, you came out last night just on fire, so excited to have gotten answers to those questions.
Yeah.
That was a massive for the Canada, and it's really unfortunate that the Debates Commission did what they did. But this is going to open a lot of eyes in the country of Canada, and I do believe that the truth will come out. And make no mistake, we're Rebel News. It will.
Yeah, please. Thank you for those kind words, guys. Sharing this, I'm going to a few things we have to do, and I see some people are leaving. But thanks to us.
Wow.
That's why we're here. We have to care about our viewers to survive.
1.73 million subscribers.
The CBC has to care about
3.9, almost 4,000 subscribers.
And that, once you know that, explains so many things.
That's powerful. Thanks so much, Ezra. Keep us posted if anything happens on the ground there. We'll be going through some super chats for a while here, I think.
Thanks very much.
Take care, buddy.
See you later.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Ezra.
Well, I guess with that, I am going to end the evening as well and say thank you for those who've joined me. You have a lovely evening. What can I say? It is the end, so see you maybe sooner than you think. Same tube time, same tube channel. Signing out. I'm your host, Madem-Oiselle. Good night.